Chapter 796. After going through countless hardships and connecting all the clues together, at this moment, he suddenly understood. The reason why the purple flame could appear and disappear so mysteriously, making it so difficult for people to see it, was not because it could turn invisible, but because it could split into many parts, making it impossible for people to see it with the naked eye. Since he had determined that there were purple flames here, then this must be the eye of the heaven and earth formation. But why couldn't he see the purple flames? He now completely understood that it was not that he couldn't see the purple flames, but because the purple flames had split into parts and were scattered throughout the eye of the formation. No wonder he could smell sparks in the air when he first came in. He was actually in the world of purple flames, but he was looking for them everywhere. How could he find them? This must be what they meant by being in this mountain. He had gone down the wrong path from the beginning. He should not have used the fire technique to resist the high temperature here. In the end, he had suffered so much for nothing. The scorching heat was getting more and more unbearable, causing Yu Qianqiu to quickly wake up from his thoughts. He calmly swept his gaze across his surroundings. He stabbed the divine sword into the ground and sat cross-legged confidently on the mountain peak. The fire technique began to give up on resisting the high temperature, and instead boldly absorbed the fire elements hidden in the air. His train of thought was not wrong, but he had forgotten the most important point. He was currently in the space of purple flames. Giving up on resisting the high temperature was tantamount to suicide. Just like how he had collected the green and black flames, he had collected them near them. If he had rashly barged in, he would have died as well. His impulsive decision immediately caused him to taste the bitter consequences. The moment he gave up on resisting the high temperature, an endless pain, as if his body was being burned by raging flames, struck the deepest part of his soul. Ah! Before he could scream, he had lost all his senses and collapsed. Almost at this moment, a dazzling golden light erupted from his abdomen at the fastest speed, protecting him and quickly dispersing the endless heat around him. When a cool feeling spread from his dantian to his limbs and bones, he slowly woke up. The moment he opened his eyes, he immediately realized that he had done something stupid. When he got up, he was surprised to find that the high temperature around him did not dare to approach him. What was going on? His gaze fell on the divine sword in front of him, and his eyes immediately brightened. Could it be that the divine sword had displayed a miraculous effect to protect him? The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was true. Suddenly, he felt that the high temperature around him was approaching again after he woke up. Not daring to hesitate any longer, he quickly sat down cross-legged and pushed the circulation of his fire art to the limit. Something strange happened. Just as he was about to activate the incantation to absorb the heat, the surrounding heat that was about to approach him seemed to have seen some kind of terrifying monster. They quickly dispersed, wanting to get as far away as possible. No matter how hard Yu Qianqiu tried to absorb, they would not come over even if they were beaten to death. It was as if they knew that once he absorbed them, they would become his vassals and puppets. In the blink of an eye, the temperature around Yu Qianqiu plummeted, F***ck. Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes and cursed. He looked around and quickly released his qi to lock on to a ball of high temperature in the air. Using a method similar to the absorbing stars technique, he forcefully absorbed the little sprites that were invisible to the naked eye into his body. After the things were absorbed into his body, Yu Qianqiu was 100% sure that what he had absorbed was indeed the elemental body of the purple fire. However, he found that the purple little sprites were 1,000 times more delicate than the black and blue fire elements. No wonder it was difficult to discover them after they were scattered. So that was the reason. Some of the purple little sprites were like prisoners that had been suppressed. They had been resisting stubbornly and seemed to be very unconvinced. However, after being escorted to his dantian, they immediately became excited when they saw the red fire attribute crystal bead that was operating. They took the initiative to rush over and circled around the red crystal bead twice, as if they were discussing something with the red crystal bead. When the red crystal bead agreed, the the little fellows all rushed into the red crystal bead. Just as the purple fire elements entered, the red crystal bead immediately erupted with red light, illuminating the entire dantian. Yu Qianqiu was still secretly amused. Suddenly, he found that his dantian seemed to be summoning something. The purple fire elements that were hiding from him began to circle above his body. Gradually, they gathered in the sky and formed a purple cloud pillar. Then, they rushed over in a frenzy. Following the circulation of the fire art, it quickly drilled into every pore of his body and gathered in his meridians, forming a purple wave that rushed into his dantian. It desperately drilled into the sparkling red crystal bead. It was a lively scene. At this time, Yu Qianqiu was sitting quietly on the peak of the mountain. The purple cloud circled above his head. The scene was extremely spectacular. What outsiders did not know was that the temperature around him at this time was simply terrifying to the extreme. It was likely that nothing could come close. The body of the divine sword that was inserted in front of him began to show a dark golden light. It seemed to be protecting itself from the damage of the high temperature. As the purple fire element surged into the red crystal bead, the volume of the red crystal bead actually slowly increased until it was twice the size of the other beads. Only then did the purple fire element stop surging in. With the exit cut off, the other purple fire elements quickly rushed towards the walls of his dantian and filled every cell in his limbs and bones. The purple cloud above Yu Qianqiu's head became more and more vigorous. It seemed that because he was here absorbing the purple fire elements from all directions crazily surged towards him. Suddenly, the weather between heaven and earth changed. It became dark and gloomy. With the appearance of a bolt of lightning, the purple cloud ignited with a boom. A purple sea of fire suddenly appeared in the sky. The raging purple sea of fire covered the sky and covered the earth. Between heaven and earth, there was a purple light. It was a spectacular sight. At this time, Yu Qianqiu's absorption of the purple fire elements was already saturated. He stopped absorbing and slowly stood up to look at the purple fire wonder in the sky. At the same time he stopped absorbing, the purple sea of fire in the sky began to move. It seemed to be melting and gradually formed 108 dazzling purple fireballs. They slowly arranged themselves into a strange three-dimensional formation, like a pyramid. The 36 fireballs in the upper half were larger, and the 72 fireballs in the lower half were smaller. This strange formation quietly floated in the air without moving. High up in the sky, the dark clouds were densely packed with lightning snakes, constantly swimming. Yu Qianqiu stared at the formation above his head in a daze. He waited for a long time, but it did not spread. For a moment, he felt an itch to try and see if he could control the 108 purple fireballs above him after absorbing the purple fire. He raised his hand to the sky and locked onto a purple fireball at the foot of the formation. He used the fire art and successfully plucked the purple fireball from the formation. It slowly floated towards him. However, not long after the purple fireball left the formation, the entire formation suddenly trembled, as if it had lost its balance. The remaining 107 fireballs in the blink of an eye began to sway and fall into a mess. F***ck. Yu Qianqiu cried out in shock. He instinctively felt that he had caused some trouble. He desperately tried to put the purple fireball he had plucked back into its original position, but the formation had already collapsed. Nothing could be done. At the instant the formation was in chaos, thunder boomed in the dark clouds high up in the sky. The entire ground seemed to be shaking. On Xian Island outside the East Holy Land, Patriarch Nanming teleported to the peak of the mountain. His eyes flickered as he stared at the pitch-black sky above the East Holy Land. Thunder boomed there, and he did not know what was about to happen. At this moment, he suddenly felt a tremor beneath his feet. When he turned around, he immediately realized that the entire Xian Island was shaking. The towering boulders on the mountain collapsed and rolled into the sea. Above the sea, there was already a strong gale and huge waves that reached the sky. The volcano on Xian Island, which had been silent for countless years, began to emit black smoke. It seemed like it was about to erupt. Patriarch Nanming was shocked. He immediately gathered his true essence and shouted at all the disciples of Xian Island, "All disciples of Xian Island, listen up. Leave the island immediately. All disciples of Xian Island, listen up. Leave the island immediately." Patriarch Nanming's voice covered the entire Xian Island. The panicking disciples on the island immediately flew away when they heard his voice. There were probably more than 1,000 of them. Just as Patriarch Nanming flashed into the sky, the volcano on Xian Island finally erupted with a boom. The gushing lava instantly engulfed the disciples who could not escape in time. Screams filled the air, and the volcanic ash covered the sky like a dark cloud. As the smoke and dust billowed, Xian Island below rumbled again. This time, it did not spew lava again. Instead, it collapsed. A huge red dragon spread its wings and carried Patriarch Nanming down from the volcanic ash in the sky to the surging sea. It flapped its wings and hovered in the air. Patriarch Nanming's eyes were filled with sorrow as he watched Xian Island collapse and sink into the sea. What Patriarch Nanming did not know was that it was not only his Xian Island that sank. The 108 islands surrounding the East Holy Land, including Xian Island, had all collapsed and sunk into the vast sea. The largest city in the East Holy Land was the Celestial City. At this moment, all the celestial cultivators had flown outside and were watching the huge change in the sky with bewilderment. The sky was dark, and thunder rumbled. No one knew what was happening. The meditation cultivators in the underground world also felt the huge change in the world. The underground space was collapsing one after another, and the meditation cultivators all dodged. The underworld saintess stood alone in the underground sacred hole. Although she felt the strong tremors, she was not alarmed. She silently watched the wall carvings on the high platform and the back of the Emperor of the Underworld. At this moment, 4 meditation cultivators with profound cultivation teleported over. Usually, they would not dare to do this, but today's incident was too sudden, so they could not care less. They bowed in unison, and the leader said anxiously, "The world has changed. It is too dangerous to stay underground. We swear to protect the Saintess to the surface to temporarily hide. Saintess, please leave with us quickly." The Underworld Saintess folded her arms and bowed to the wall carvings of the Emperor of the Underworld calmly. She then turned to face the 4 anxious people and said slowly, "Pass down my order. Everyone is to gather and prepare to return to the Underworld. The great formation of heaven and earth is about to be broken." Chapter 797. When the 4 of them heard this, they were stunned. They all thought that they had heard wrongly and looked at each other inquisitively. When the Netherworld Saintess quietly passed by the 4 of them, she said again, "The Eastern Holy Land is about to be broken. Everyone, gather. It's time to return to the Netherworld." The 4 of them were instantly shocked and revealed expressions of indescribable joy. The words of others might be false, but to them, the Saintess' words were absolutely not false. They immediately bowed and said, "Understood." Then, 2 of them followed beside the Netherworld Saintess to protect her, while the other 2 quickly went to pass on the order. Yu Qianqiu stared dumbfoundedly at the huge change between heaven and earth. He saw the 108 purple fireballs floating in the air move chaotically, as if they were being pulled by an invisible rope. They wanted to break free, but were pulled back by each other. However, because the weather was already chaotic, the invisible rope's power seemed to be limited. With a thunderous boom, the invisible rope finally broke. The 108 purple fireballs quickly rushed into the sky and condensed into a ball. The light gradually extinguished, turning back into purple mist and merging with the dark clouds in the sky. After the purple mist merged with the dark clouds, it immediately began to rain heavily. The pitter-patter was so rapid that it wantonly watered this vast desolate land. The barren hills and the desolate desert were instantly covered in mist. The high temperature that had persisted for who knew how many years had finally started to cool down. Perhaps after a few years, this place would become verdant and full of life. Who knew if there would be people thanking a certain person who had caused a great disaster at that time? The heavy downpour continued for an entire day, completely lowering the high temperature below. At this time, the lightning and thunder in the dark clouds began to die down. Then, a violent wind blew, and the dark clouds that filled the sky began to drift in all directions. Not long after, the world began to gradually regain its clarity, as if nothing had happened. Only the sudden change in temperature told of the huge change that had just occurred. Yu Qianqiu stood on the mountain peak like a drowned rat, completely dumbfounded. If he hadn't guessed wrong, he should have destroyed the formation Eye of the Heaven and Earth formation. If I'm not wrong, the Heaven and Earth Great Array should have been broken by me. What he didn't know was that the so-called Heaven and Earth Great Array of Heaven and Earth contained the Tao of Heaven and Earth. Once the Great Array was set up, it would immediately absorb the power of Heaven and Earth to support the operation of the Great Array. The absorbed origin energy was converted into the 36 heavenly spirits and 72 earthly fiends to form the core of the formation. If one did not know the method to break this formation, it would be almost impossible to break it with brute force, unless one had the strength to destroy the entire planet. Yu Qianqiu's absorption of the purple fire elements had more or less destroyed the balance of the formation. As a result, the eye of the formation had appeared and was adjusting the balance of power on its own. But he had actually plucked away one of the fireballs that represented the 72 earthly fiends, completely destroying the balance of the eye of the formation. The 36 celestial dippers and 72 earthly fiends were in chaos, and the formation I was destroyed by him. With the formation I destroyed, the formation was naturally broken by him. The Myriad Swords Demon Lord, who had set up this formation back then, probably never would have thought that the Heaven and Earth Great Array could actually be broken by someone like this. On the tallest building in the Immortal City, the Rakshasa, who had already become the actual owner of this place, led a group of people and looked at the dispersing dark clouds in the sky. Everyone felt a little baffled. They did not know why there was thunder and earth quaking. At that moment, a group of meditation cultivators suddenly appeared in the sky. They formed a group and hurried west. The Rakshasa frowned and shouted angrily with a hoarse voice, "Someone go and ask what exactly is going on." "Yes." A person behind him quickly caught up to the group of meditation cultivators. After asking around, he quickly flew back and said with cupped hands, "Sky. Sky. Sky." From the looks of it, he seemed to be so agitated that he did not know what to say. Slap. The Rakshasa immediately gave him a big slap and made him spin around. He shouted angrily, "Sky, what sky? Tell me, what exactly is going on?" That person immediately woke up from the slap, but the agitation on his face did not disperse. He cupped his hands again and reported, "The Netherworld cultivators said that the Heaven and Earth Great Array has been broken. They want us to quickly return to the celestial world and not be trapped here anymore." "Nonsense. Don't you have a brain?" The Rakshasa shouted angrily and gave him another big slap. This slap was much heavier than the previous one. That person almost fell to the ground on the spot. After that person stumbled, he finally could not be agitated anymore. He covered his face and said with a sobbing tone, "It's true. They really said that. When I was flying just now, I also realized that the Heaven and Earth Great Array will not extract the celestial essence in my body anymore." The group of people looked at each other. The Rakshasa suddenly looked up into the sky and turned into a stream of light, shooting straight up into the sky. To his surprise, the Heaven and Earth Great Array was really broken. The height that he could not fly at because of the restriction of the Great Array before was now unimpeded. Moreover, there was no phenomenon of the celestial essence in his body being extracted again. However, after being pleasantly surprised for a while, his face instantly turned pale and he felt a chill down his spine. The Rakshasa suddenly thought of immortal Lord Ji-Woo whom he had ambushed and injured. The reason why he ambushed immortal Lord Ji-Woo was because he did not want to be restrained by others in this world. That was why he made a desperate move. Who knew that she would still escape? Now that the heaven and earth great array was broken, everyone had to return to the celestial world. Ambushing immortal Lord Ji-Woo was equivalent to doing nothing. The worst thing was that Ji-Woo was still not found. If the heaven and earth great array was not broken, everyone would listen to him and there would still be a chance to find immortal Lord Ji-Woo. But now that the great array was broken, who would be willing to stay in the human world to help him chase after Ji-Woo? In addition, Ji-Woo could now escape to a wider range, so the chance of finding her was even slimmer. He now regretted, really regretted. If he had known that the heaven and earth great array would suddenly collapse, he would definitely not have done that. Now that his master, Yi Shao, was dead, he would not have any backing even if he returned to the celestial world. It was impossible for him to defeat Ji-Woo. In a flash, a ruthless expression flashed across his face. He had already made up his mind that the most important thing now was to return to the celestial world as soon as possible and find a reliable backing at all costs. That way, he would not have to fear Ji-Woo's revenge. After making up his mind, he quickly turned into a stream of light and returned upstairs. With a smile on his face, he looked around at the crowd and said in a hoarse voice, "Everyone, the heaven and earth great array is indeed broken. We can successfully return to the celestial world." Hearing that, the group of people upstairs immediately cheered. But at this moment, someone suddenly asked, "Then what about immortal Lord Ji-Woo?" This was like a basin of cold water splashing on everyone's head. Everyone was immediately dumbfounded. Almost everyone present had participated in the pursuit of Ji-Woo. Rakshasa immediately waved his hand and laughed in a hoarse voice. "Everyone, don't panic. I already have a countermeasure. Ji-Woo is not the only immortal lord in the celestial world. As long as we are united, I believe any immortal lord will be willing to accept us with such a huge force. By then, why would we need to be afraid of Ji-Woo?" The person who asked the question nodded slightly. "That's right. As long as we are united, Ji-Woo will not be able to do anything to us." Everyone looked at each other and nodded silently. They felt that what he said made sense. Everyone. Rakshasa waved his arm and said, "There's no time to lose. Everyone, quickly pack what you can and inform those who need to be informed. In half a day, we will return to the celestial world together." "Yes." Everyone responded excitedly. On the top of the mountain, Yu Qianqiu, who had come back to his senses, looked around in a daze. Then, he checked the condition of his body. He was shocked when he saw it. Inside his dantian, 8 more nascent souls appeared silently. A total of 10 nascent souls with the same appearance sat cross-legged in a circle. All 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls appeared. Isn't this the peak of the soul formation final stage? Could it be that my cultivation directly broke through to the peak of the soul formation final stage? Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. He carefully checked the condition of his body again. In the end, he couldn't help but let out a breath of cold air. He found that his cultivation had indeed broken through to the peak of the soul formation final stage. He was only one step away from becoming a celestial expert. Feeling the surging power in his body that he had never felt before, Yu Qianqiu frowned and fell into deep thought. He felt that it was a bit strange. Why didn't he use a single spirit stone to break through? Apart from absorbing the purple flames, he didn't do anything else. Could it be that the purple flames played a role? That's right, it must be the powerful power contained in the purple flames. His guess was right. The purple flames were the symbol of the matured origin energy of heaven and earth. The powerful power contained in it was not something that spirit stones could compare to. After he absorbed the purple flames, the boundless power immediately felt restricted. Thus, the purple flames changed his cultivation to suit it. In the end, it gave him a huge advantage. It was a pity that he didn't know how to use it. Otherwise, he could use the power of the purple flames to forge an immortal body and become a celestial expert. He missed an opportunity for nothing. Sometimes, gains and losses were determined by fate. He had already taken a huge advantage. If he was too greedy, he might end up empty-handed. Ha! At this moment, Yu Qianqiu was laughing wildly with excitement. This trip was too worth it. Not only did he obtain the purple flames, but he also increased his cultivation to the peak of the soul formation final stage. The hardships he suffered before were too worth it. Fortunately, he gritted his teeth and persevered without giving up. Otherwise, he would definitely regret it to death. Halfway through his wild laughter, his smile suddenly froze. He suddenly looked into the distance. He thought of a big problem. Once the heaven and earth great formation of heaven and earth was broken, wouldn't all the experts from the netherworld and immortal realms who were trapped inside be freed? Once they flooded the human world, who could stop them? Damn it! The human world is my territory. No one is allowed to mess around. If you anger me, I'll use you to test the power of the purple flames. Yu Qianqiu's face flashed with ferocity. He immediately disappeared from where he was standing. Once he returned to Obedient Island, Yu Qianqiu quietly stood beside the 1,000-mile lake. He held a shining white mirror in his hand. It was as if he was holding up a bright moon. The scene that appeared in the mirror was the scene at the entrance of the 9 Netherworld Cave in the Yin Wind Valley. Chapter 798. Lady Moose stood quietly behind him. She could feel that her master's mental state was very good this time. He no longer had the fatigue of being tortured. His brows, in particular, seemed to be full of confidence. However, she could also see the seriousness in his eyes. It seemed that something big was about to happen. She had seen Bai Changchun use the mirror in Yu Qianqiu's hand. In fact, she wanted to see what could be seen in the mirror, but without Yu Qianqiu's permission, she didn't dare to peep. Otherwise, once she violated the taboo, the consequences were not something she could bear. Yu Qianqiu didn't smile cheekily anymore. She also stood behind silently with her head down. The mirror in Yu Qianqiu's hand was called the Heaven's Eye Mirror. It meant that it was the eye of the heavens. It could watch everything quietly. It was a treasure passed down from generation to generation among the torture envoys. It was specially used to control the demon realm. The original owner of this treasure was the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch. In fact, the entire monster ghost realm was just another formation set up by the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch. This secret was only known to the torture envoys of the monster ghost realm, and it was of great importance. This formation had a very illustrious name. It was called the Demon Spirit Execution Formation. This formation was different from the Heaven and Earth Universe Formation, which was purely a defensive formation. It was an extremely powerful killing formation. Once it was activated, almost everyone who broke into it would die. The reason why the Demon Lord of Thousand Swords chose this location to set up this killing formation was very simple. He wanted to leave a backup plan just in case he couldn't do it himself. He also didn't want the Demon Lord of the Demon Realm, the Immortal Emperor of the Immortal Realm, and the Underworld Emperor of the Underworld to recklessly break into the human world. The torture envoys of the demon realm were the ones who carried out the punishment on his behalf. This was also the real origin of the name of the torture envoys. However, the area covered by the demon spirit punishing formation was limited. After including the entrances to the demon realm and the underworld, it couldn't unify the entrances to the immortal realm. Therefore, the demon spirit punishing formation set up an extremely powerful soul transformation smoke at the entrance to the immortal realm. Immortal Emperor Jin Tai couldn't come to the human world even if he wanted to. Unless he wanted to die, the only way was to use the underworld realm and come out from the underworld cave. The myriad swords fiend lord's intentions were obvious. This face spirit slaughtering formation was mainly meant to deal with the big shots of the immortal, nether, and demon realms. He seemed to want to tell the three of them that even if he died, he would lock them up and not let them do whatever they wanted. The heaven's eye mirror in Yu Qianzhou's hand was the eye of this formation, and also the key to activating the demonic spirit punishing formation. Once the killing formation was activated, it would instantly bathe the entire demon ghost region in blood and refine the countless demon ghosts within the demon ghost region. This was the peerless name of the demon ghost celestial eradication formation. The more demonic ghosts they refined, the more powerful the killing formation would be. This was also the main reason why the torturing commissioners kept demonic ghosts and never let them out of the domain of demons and ghosts. Once the demonic monarch of the devil realm, the immortal emperor of the immortal realm, and the emperor of the underworld barged into this place, the torture commissioner would activate the killing formation. Even if the three of them survived, they wouldn't have a good ending. Although this formation was ferocious, it also had a flaw. It was too powerful, and if they weren't careful, they could implicate the entire human realm, turning it into a real ghost realm. Therefore, whenever there were too many demon ghosts in the domain of demons and ghosts, the torture commissioners would find an excuse to cleanse some of them. Through the heaven's eye mirror, Yu Qianzhou silently watched the entrance of the Jiu Yu Hell Cavern. He didn't want to activate the demonic spirit punishing formation, but to see if the people from the netherworld and immortal realm would go back through the Jiu Yu Hell Cavern. The immortal ascension plateau was sealed by the soul-dispelling smoke, so if the people from the immortal realm wanted to go back, they would have to go through the netherworld cavern. According to his calculations, there was no need for these two groups of people to stay in the human realm. The human realm's environment wasn't suitable for immortal cultivators and meditation cultivators. But, if there really was someone who refused to leave, he would do anything to make up for the destruction of the heaven and earth Qinquan formation. Logically speaking, they would definitely go back, but Yu Qianzhou was worried about Rakshasa and the others in the immortal realm. They had offended Ji Wu, so it was possible that they wouldn't dare to return to the immortal realm and would stay in the human realm. If that was the case, things would be troublesome. Although he had absorbed the purple fire and his cultivation level had reached the peak of the soul formation final stage, he still didn't have the confidence to deal with so many immortal cultivators. There were only two ways to completely solve this problem. One was to find Bai Changchun and deal with them, the other was to lure them into the domain of demons and ghosts and then activate the demonic spirit punishing formation to kill them in one fell swoop. As for which method to use, he hadn't decided yet. He didn't want to use either method. He could only hope that these people would go back obediently and not force him to make a choice. The vast domain of demons and ghosts that was shrouded in dark clouds had existed silently for countless years. At this time, there were nearly 1,000 people standing in the sky above the domain of demons and ghosts. They were all meditation cultivators who had escaped from the Eastern Holy Land. Everyone stared in bewilderment at the surging dark clouds in front of them. The auras of demons and ghosts were mixed together. They remembered that when they first came out of the netherworld, there were no such boundless dark clouds here. How did it become like this now? Could it be that something had happened? The netherworld saintess, who had witnessed all this, had closed her eyes and been silent for a long time. Almost all the meditation cultivators' gazes were focused on her, waiting for her instructions. Although her experience was shallow and her cultivation level wasn't that great, everyone believed her words without a doubt. The long wait made everyone look up at the blazing sun in the sky from time to time. All of them seemed a bit uncomfortable. They weren't used to being exposed to the sun. It could even be said that they hated the sun. At this time, the netherworld saintess finally opened her eyes slowly. Her eyes were as deep as autumn water, and she quietly stared at the depths of the domain of demons and ghosts. She lightly said, "We just need to go back to our netherworld. Remember, don't get into conflict with anyone, lest we provoke someone we can't afford to provoke. Let's go. The 4 people behind her quickly turned around and conveyed her instructions. The group of meditation cultivators obeyed and instantly swarmed toward the domain of demons and ghosts. As soon as the group of meditation cultivators with such powerful cultivations entered the domain of demons and ghosts, the powerful aura they emitted immediately deterred the demonic spirits below and made them all tremble with fear. Wherever they went, the eerie and terrifying wails and howls of ghosts immediately stopped, and everything became quiet. The chilly Wind Valley's great formation was easily penetrated by them, and they saw the way back to the netherworld that they had been dreaming about, the netherworld cave. As the netherworld saintess landed on the cliff opposite the netherworld cave, although the others were anxious to return, they didn't dare to trespass. They all landed behind her and waited for her next instructions. They firmly believed that as long as they followed the saintess's instructions, they would definitely be able to return to the netherworld safely. Yuji and the others had long been alarmed, but they didn't dare to approach them. They stood far away and looked at this group of people with bewilderment and uncertainty. From the majestic death chi around them, it could be seen that they were obviously the same kind as them, but the powerful aura they emitted was not something they could compare with at all. Yuji and the others couldn't imagine where these people came from. The netherworld saintess's gaze fell on Yuji. Her deep and peaceful eyes stared at her for a long time, and then she waved to the people behind her and said, "You can go back first." As soon as her words came out, it immediately caused a commotion. The 4 people behind her who were protecting her were shocked. One of them immediately cupped his hands and said, "Saintess, don't you want to go back to the netherworld? You misunderstood me. You can go first, and I will come back later," the netherworld saintess said lightly. The 4 people were relieved and made a gesture to the nearly 1,000 people behind them to go back. The group of meditation cultivators immediately became excited, but in front of the saintess, they still maintained their order and didn't appear crowded. One after another, they turned into flowing lights and shot into the 9th netherworld cave. However, the saintess's 4 guards didn't leave, and they still surrounded and protected her. In the end, only the 5 of them were left on the cliff. The netherworld saintess suddenly waved at Yuji and said, "Come here." Yuji was shocked, but she could tell from their conversation just now that these people were from the netherworld, and she couldn't afford to offend them at all. She gritted her teeth and was about to go forward, but the group of ghost generals behind her cried out in alarm, "Madam, you can't." Yuji turned around and forced a smile, saying, "It's okay, don't worry." Then she teleported in front of the netherworld saintess and looked at the 4 men behind her who were staring at her with cold expressions. She quickly looked away and didn't dare to look at them. She bowed and said, "Senior, why did you summon me?" The netherworld saintess looked at her silently for a while, and suddenly took out a small black token and handed it over, saying, "If you encounter any trouble in the netherworld in the future, this might be able to help you a little." Yuji was startled, but she still took it and bowed respectfully, saying, "Thank you, senior." But in her heart, she was puzzled. "I won't have the chance to go to the netherworld in my life, so why would I encounter any trouble in the netherworld?" Not to mention her, even the 4 people behind the netherworld saintess were a little surprised. They looked at each other and didn't know why the saintess would favor this small ghost cultivator in the mortal world. The netherworld saintess didn't say much, and just suddenly raised her head and looked in the direction of Obedient Island. And on Obedient Island, Yu Qianqiu was also looking at her through the Heaven Eye mirror. Their gazes met unexpectedly in the mirror, and it seemed like they were looking at each other. Yu Qianqiu was slightly startled, and he muttered in his heart, "This woman is so strange, could it be that she knows I'm looking at her?" While he was puzzled, the netherworld saintess and the other 4 had already turned into flowing lights and flashed into the 9th netherworld cave. The vast east sea waves surged, and Patriarch Nan Ming stood on the red dragon that was flapping its wings in the air. Behind him were the surviving disciples of Xian Xian Island, and Xian Xian Island had long disappeared in the turbulent sea. Patriarch Nan Ming, who was originally sad, was now staring at the East Sacred Land with his mouth agape. The group of disciples behind him were also stunned. The East sacred land that had been shrouded by the white fog for countless years. The white fog that never dissipated disappeared after a great change, and the mysterious veil of the East sacred land was finally lifted. What terrified him the most was that he actually saw a group of people flying out of the East sacred land at high speed. Could it be that the East sacred land has already? An unimaginable thought appeared in Patriarch Nanming's mind. However, at this moment, another group of densely packed flowing lights flew over from the East sacred land and quickly flew over their heads. There were also flowing lights that appeared in the sky. After that person silently sized them up for a while, he turned into a flowing light and flew away. Chapter 799. To the cultivators of the mortal world, the Eastern Holy Land was called a Holy Land because it was forever shrouded in a mysterious veil. No one had ever hoped to easily see its true face. But today, everything was clearly presented before everyone's eyes. The people of Xian Island were suddenly at a loss and felt that it was unreal. This was a matter of great importance. Forefather Nanming gritted his teeth and decided to confirm it himself. He immediately dashed away from the red dragon's back and flew directly to the Eastern Holy Land. As he approached, he subconsciously slowed down, but the resistance he felt in the past had completely disappeared. Although Forefather Nanming had guessed this possibility, he still couldn't help but be shocked. He landed lightly on a towering reef by the sea. Waves crashed against the shore, and the sea breeze blew. Forefather Nanming looked around and cast his gaze towards the depths of this continent. In the distance, there were undulating mountain ranges, lush forests, and birds flying freely in the sky. On the outside, it looked no different from the other continents in the mortal world. He wanted to take a closer look, but subconsciously, he was still afraid of this holy land. Since he had confirmed that the seal on the Eastern Holy Land had been completely opened, there was no need to take any more risks. Forefather Nanming quickly flew back to the disciples and said with a serious expression, "The world has changed, and the Eastern Holy Land has been opened. It is not advisable to stay here for long. Go to the southern sea purple bamboo forest to rest for the time being. I will go inform Mr. Nongzhu first." "Yes." The disciples replied in unison. The red dragon flapped its wings and carried Forefather Nanming away, quickly disappearing into the distant horizon. Thousands of immortal cultivators flew across the sky, and the first place they entered was the airspace of the Huaxia cultivation world. To mortals in the mortal world, with their eyesight, not many could see the immortals flying in the sky. However, to the cultivators below, they might not have noticed if there were few of them, but how could they not notice when so many of them appeared at the same time? The people of the Huaxia Cultivation Alliance thought it was another surprise attack from the other countries and immediately sent people to stop them. However, they realized that by the time they took to the sky, the immortals had already flown far away. Their speed was so fast that they could only look at them in the dust. The majestic aura that remained in the air made everyone tremble. They felt a powerful aura that they had never felt before, a powerful aura that made them tremble. All of them stared dumbfoundedly at the speck of light that quickly disappeared into the distance. The colorful mist of the dense fog forest was still drifting slowly. 100,000 years had passed, but it had not weakened or faded in the slightest. It was still as beautiful and enchanting as ever. But today, those wanderers who had left home 100,000 years ago had finally returned. A group of flowing lights landed on the ground and revealed themselves. Rakshasa led thousands of immortal cultivators to descend on the wasteland at the periphery of the mist forest. Seeing the magnificent seven-colored mist in front of them, all of them turned pale with fright. Many of them exclaimed, "Soul formation smoke." Everyone was dumbfounded. This result was far beyond their expectations. Never in their wildest dreams would they have encountered such a thing. The excitement of returning to the immortal world instantly vanished, and his heart turned cold. Luo Sha's expression also changed drastically. After gnashing his teeth, he roared angrily in a hoarse voice, Who did it? Who did this? Behind the anger was fear and dread. If everyone could not return to the immortal world, the consequences would be terrible. Once Ji Woo's injuries were healed, they would be like lambs trapped in a cage, waiting to be slaughtered. No one could answer his question. Everyone else also wanted to know who could actually do such a wicked thing. They had finally escaped the heaven and earth universe formation. Just as they were about to return home, they suddenly realized that there was no way back. How could they endure this? Anger, despair, sorrow, and not knowing whether to laugh or cry filled everyone's faces. After taking a deep breath, Luo Sha forcibly suppressed his emotions that were about to explode. He knew that it was useless to be anxious at this time. Finding a way to solve the problem was the key. He slowly turned around and swept his gaze across everyone. With just us, it is impossible to overcome this hurdle of the soul formation smoke. Everyone, please come up with an idea. Let's see if there is any other way. Many people shook their heads in despair. After everyone was silent for a long time, someone suddenly sighed. I wonder if those people from the Netherworld realm are as unlucky as us. I wonder what the situation at the 9th Netherworld cave is. Could it have also been blocked by someone with the soul formation smoke? Hearing this, someone immediately did not know whether to laugh or cry. You still have the time to worry about them. So what if the 9th Netherworld cave is not blocked? Do you still think that the Netherworld realm will lend us a way back to the immortal world? Everyone sighed. Everyone knew that the Netherworld Emperor and the Immortal Emperor did not get along. From top to bottom, the relationship between the immortal world and the Netherworld was naturally not much better. Luo Sha's eyes flickered, and he slowly said in a hoarse voice, "The 9th Netherworld cave is our last hope. Without enough people, the Netherworld realm will definitely stop us from passing through. However, we have thousands of immortal cultivators here. Even the Netherworld Emperor will not rashly punish us. If he really does that, I'm afraid that even the Immortal Emperor will not be able to withstand the pressure. Unless the Netherworld wants to start a war with the immortal world. Besides, what can we do if we don't try? It's better than staying here and waiting for Ji Woo to kill us." His words were actually a bit against his will. Others might not know, but he had followed Immortal Lord Night Owl for many years and knew a lot about the upper echelons of the immortal world and the Netherworld realm. For people like the Immortal Emperor and the Netherworld Emperor, even if tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of immortal cultivators died, they might not even bat an eye, let alone thousands of immortal cultivators. To them, the immortal cultivators below them were no different from ants. Unless it was related to their own interests, they would only use the word righteousness when they attacked. To Luo Sha, he was the mastermind behind the sneak attack on Ji Woo. Ji Woo might let anyone go, but not him. Thus, he had to find a way to leave and return to the immortal world as soon as possible to find a life-saving backer. The reason why he pulled everyone together was just as he said. With a large group of people, it would be easier to find a backer when they returned to the immortal world. Moreover, they would have a greater chance of passing through the Netherworld. Hearing his words, everyone nodded in agreement. Although some people knew about Luo Sha's little scheme, they were not stupid. They would not express their objections at this time if they could not win. In the end, under Luo Sha's instigation, a large group of people headed towards the 9th Netherworld cave full of hope. When they hurriedly rushed to the periphery of the demon domain, they were also shocked by the demon domain that was densely covered with dark clouds, just like the group of people from the underworld. This damn thing did not exist in the past at all. What happened? However, compared to the others, Luo Sha had no way out. He immediately risked his life for everyone to see. He barged into the Devil Ghost region alone to find a way out. When he came back, he told everyone that he was fine. Then, he dragged a group of people to accompany him. Yu Ji and the others in Chilly Wind Valley did not know what was going on today. They watched helplessly as a group of people with frighteningly high cultivation broke into the 9th netherworld cave. The group of ghost cultivators could not help but be secretly shocked. It turned out that there were so many experts in the human world outside. It seemed that staying in the Devil Ghost region was not a bad thing. Not long after Luo Xia and the others entered the 9th netherworld cave, Yu Qianqiu suddenly appeared on the cliff opposite the 9th netherworld cave. Although his attire was rather different, greatly reducing his image, his expression was unprecedentedly solemn. He narrowed his eyes and stared at the entrance of the 9th netherworld cave. The group hurried over to greet him. Yu Qianqiu also felt that his attire was inappropriate from their gazes. Now that he had obtained the purple flames, he should not be wearing this to embarrass himself. He had been too busy and had forgotten about it. He turned back and looked at Yu Ji with a smile. He asked casually, "What did that woman give you? Are you very familiar with the people from the netherworld?" Yu Ji was shocked. She did not expect Yu Qianqiu to know about this. In reality, she did not think much of it. She quickly took out the small black tablet and presented it with both hands. She said fearfully, "Yu Ji has never seen her before. I don't know why she would give something to Yu Ji." Yu Qianqiu turned the small tablet over and looked at it. It seemed to be made of wood, but he had never seen this kind of wood before. It was very hard. He secretly used his hidden force to hold it, but it was not damaged at all. The pattern on the tablet was very simple. One side was a cloud pattern, and the other side was engraved with a mountain. There were 6 peaks on the mountain, and the outer 5 peaks surrounded the highest peak in the middle. There seemed to be a grand palace on the middle peak. After looking at it for a while, he could not see anything. He could not help but frown and ask, "What did she say to you?" "Nothing much. She only said that if I encounter any trouble in the netherworld in the future, this tablet might be of some help," Yu Ji replied honestly. In her heart, she was very worried that Yu Qianqiu would misunderstand that she had some connection with the netherworld. Yu Qianqiu's brows twitched slightly as he stared at Yu Ji with a flicker in his eyes. The status of the underworld's holy maiden in the underworld was not to be underestimated. Her words and actions, which were like prophets, were filled with an unfathomable mystery. Why did she give this tablet to Yu Ji? Why did she say that Yu Ji would encounter trouble in the netherworld? Could it be that she had foreseen that Yu Ji would go to the netherworld in the future? "Do you know who gave you this tablet?" Yu Qianqiu asked with a smile. Yu Ji really does not know. Yu Ji's words were filled with more fear. She was a little confused. Yu Qianqiu explained with a smile, "She is the saintess of the underworld, second only to the emperor of the netherworld. She has the noblest status in the netherworld, except for the emperor of the underworld. You are very lucky to be favored by her." "Ah!" Yu Ji was shocked. She looked at Yu Qianqiu with her eyes wide open and tongue-tied. Disbelief was written all over her face. She could not understand why such a noble person would take the initiative to give something to her. At the same time, she felt that Yu Qianqiu was even more mysterious. He even knew such a noble person from the netherworld. The group of ghost generals behind her were also sizing each other up in shock. Yu Qianqiu smiled and grabbed Yu Ji's hand. He stuffed the tablet into her hand and said with a smile, "Since the saintess of the underworld gave it to you, you should take good care of it. Maybe one day, as she said, this thing will be of help to you." Chapter 800. Hearing his words, Yu Ji became even more terrified and didn't dare to keep it. She wanted to say something like offering it to her teacher, but Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said indifferently, "Keep it. Don't lose it." As he spoke, the 9th netherworld cave suddenly changed again, and a chilly wind blew wildly. Yu Qianqiu's eyes flashed, and he shot into the 9th netherworld cave. He flew quickly along the passageway, holding a ball of purple fire in each of his palms as a precaution. With his current cultivation and immunity to the chilly wind and evil spirit in the Netherworld cave, his journey was almost unimpeded, and he directly rushed to the end of the Netherworld cave. After entering the Netherworld fire sea, he quickly looked around, and finally floated in front of the Netherworld gate. Looking at the seamlessly closed ghost gate, he withdrew the purple fire in his palms into his body. He checked along the way and didn't see anyone. Obviously, the intruders had all entered this gate. This was what he hoped to see. After sending away the group of pests, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. As for whether there were any survivors in the human world outside, it was no longer important. Although a group of them was terrifying, he was confident that he could deal with a few clowns with the ferocity of the purple fire. Today, he had already regarded the human world as his own territory, and he wouldn't allow outsiders to trample on it. With his cultivation and means at this level, his strong self-confidence had already made him somewhat similar to Bai Changchun's thoughts. He had unknowingly carried a heavy burden on his shoulders, and subconsciously felt that he had the responsibility to maintain the peace of the human world. It was also from this day onwards that the change in his cultivation and thinking allowed him to truly transform into a real Devil Ghost Region torturer. The new generation of Devil Ghost Region torturer finally began to look down on the world. This was Bai Changchun's unique choice, and reality proved that he didn't choose the wrong person. After returning to Shantian Island, Yu Qianqiu's body flashed with a purple light, and his fur clothes instantly turned into ashes. This scene made Lady Mu tremble with fear. The torturer really hid his strength well. Occasionally, he would show his unparalleled strength with every move he made, and it wasn't something a little demon like her could covet. Yu Qianqiu swung his braids, and with a swish, the braids scattered and became strands of long hair. He didn't care that he was completely naked in front of Lady Mu. He took out a yellow pill, rubbed it into powder, mixed it with water, and smeared it all over his body. After a layer of paste was formed, he jumped into the 1,000-mile lake to wash himself. When he came out of the water again, he had returned to his original self. Miss Mu hurriedly went over to help him adjust his clothes and tie up his hair. Then, she watched as Yu Qianqiu walked steadily towards the big house in the center of the island. Lady Mu suddenly felt as if she was looking at her boss with that kind of confidence and calmness. Yu Qianqiu sat cross-legged inside the large room. He spread out his palms, each emitting a purple flame. After silently admiring it for a while, a ball of black fire and a ball of green fire appeared. The three brightly colored flames burned and danced. What he wanted to do the most at the moment was to fuse the three flames into the true Samadhi fire, which even immortal emperors were afraid of, and he was ready to try it. Looking around, he couldn't help but sigh. It was on this obedient island that he first heard Healy talk about the true Samadhi fire. Now, things were the same, but people were different. He didn't think that he would one day collect all three types of true Samadhi fire, and he didn't think that he would become the master of the demon domain. After sighing, he took a deep breath and withdrew the flames into his body. Just as he was about to close his eyes to meditate, he felt a fluctuation from the communication array outside. After waiting for a while, Lady Mu quickly walked in. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, "What's the matter?" Lady Mu bowed and said, "It's Mr. Nongzhu from the Purple Bamboo Forest in the South Sea. He said that he has an important matter to discuss with you." Important matter? What important matter could he have? Yu Qianqiu muttered to himself and suddenly disappeared from the big house. When he appeared in the depths of the Purple Bamboo Forest in the Southern Sea, he suddenly heard someone shouting in the sky, "Disciples of Xian Island greet Senior Nongzhu." Yu Qianqiu raised his head and looked through the gaps in the bamboo leaves. He saw hundreds of people in the air. After that, he heard a light sound in the air. It was probably the opening of the defensive formation. The hundreds of people flew in orderly. Why did such a large group of Xian Island disciples come here? Could it be because of the matter in the Eastern Holy Land? Yu Qianqiu walked towards the blessed land of bamboo with a stomach full of doubts. He had only taken a few steps when he heard a large group of people greeting Nongzhu. Then, he heard Ancestor Nanming yell at the top of his voice, "Find a corner and stay there. Don't damage the bamboos of the purple bamboo forest." The group of people obeyed and scattered in all directions to find a place to stay. Yu Qianqiu also walked out slowly with his hands behind his back. He immediately saw Nongzhu and Ancestor Nanming, who were whispering together in the courtyard. Both of their expressions were very solemn. Yu Qianqiu chuckled and said, "Seniors, how have you been?" The two of them tilted their heads and looked at each other in surprise. Nongzhu was still fine, but Ancestor Nanming was stunned and said, "Why are you here so quickly?" Yu Qianqiu walked over with a smile and didn't explain. The more he explained, the more troublesome it would be. He asked Nongzhu, "What's the important matter that made you look for me in such a hurry?" Nongzhu's expression turned serious and looked at Ancestor Nanming, indicating for him to speak. The latter nodded and said solemnly, "The great formation that sealed the Eastern Holy Land has completely disappeared. Xian Island has also suffered a disaster and collapsed in the sea. The experts from the Immortal Realm and Netherworld have already come out. I'm afraid the human world is going to be in chaos. Your demon region will be the first to bear the brunt. You have to plan ahead." Xian Island was destroyed. Yu Qianqiu was stunned and immediately decided to keep the secret that he was the one who broke the heaven and earth formation. Nongzhu nodded and continued, "Since the Eastern Holy Land has been completely opened, how is your master? Did he return to the demon region?" Yu Qianqiu laughed and waved his hand disapprovingly, "I already know about this. You don't have to worry. The human world will not be in chaos. Those people have already left the human world." The two of them looked at each other and Nongzhu asked, "Are you sure?" "Of course I know. My master has already returned, and his cultivation has increased tremendously. He has now gone to the Netherworld." Yu Qianqiu explained ambiguously. He felt that there was no need to tell them everything about the Immortal Realm and Netherworld. Knowing too much might not be a good thing for them. It was better to let them continue living in their own world. "Your master is fine?" Nongzhu asked in surprise. Yu Qianqiu shrugged and said, "What can happen to him? Don't you have confidence in him?" That's good, that's good." Nongzhu heaved a sigh of relief and praised, "Old Bai is indeed Old Bai. He can actually enter the Netherworld. Amazing. No wonder he is the #1 expert in the human world." Grandmaster Nanming also shook his head with admiration. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said nothing. What made them sigh was that Bai Changchun's world was getting further and further away from them. If he told them the truth, it would probably scare them. Looking around, he was slightly stunned and said, "Where are they? Why don't I see any of them?" He was naturally referring to Furong and the other women. "Zi has brought them to the sea." Nongzhu snorted and looked at him coldly. She did not hesitate to fall out with him. She sneered and said, "Do you think my purple bamboo forest is your backyard? I'm warning you, if you dare to bring other women here, I will kill them all." I just remembered that I have something urgent to do. Seniors, farewell." "Stop!" Nongzhu shouted angrily. However, Yu Qianqiu disappeared in an instant, leaving behind Nongzhu and old ancestor Nanming with horrified expressions. They did not see how Yu Qianqiu had left. The war in Huaxia finally ended. With the end of the Li dynasty, the actual control of the whole Huaxia was in Shi Wenguang's hands. The end of the war allowed the people to see the light of hope again. The incense burning in the mountain god temple to pray for peace was flourishing again. Yu Qianqiu stood under a big tree on the platform halfway up the mountain and looked at the mountain god temple with smoke rising from it. Gu Qingyun and Hong Qi, who had finished reporting the recent situation, looked at him in awe. Now, the news that Yu Qianqiu was the torture master of the demon ghost region had already spread throughout the cultivation world. Especially in the Battle of Lingfang Valley, where he killed 4 experts in the late divine transformation realm, his prestige was pushed to the peak. It was like he was the #1 expert in the world, especially in the cultivation world of Huaxia. Yu Qianqiu, who had been the idol of the grassroots disciples of various sects, had now climbed to the peak of the cultivation world and received the admiration of the people in the world, dazzling those grassroots disciples even more. After all, the grassroots disciples occupied the majority of the sections. As the representative of the grassroots disciples, Yu Qianqiu had undoubtedly realized the ideal in everyone's hearts. Therefore, the whole cultivation world of Huaxia set off a craze of crazy worship for him. With Yu Qianqiu's current prestige, the sects did not dare to suppress this craze in their sects anymore. For a time, the new torture master of the demon ghost region was almost a legend by word of mouth. It's time for you to expand your power. Go out of the cultivation world of Huaxia and unite the rogue cultivators in the world. Yu Qianqiu turned to face the two and said lightly, be careful to keep a low profile. Don't make the countries desperate and fight back. You can secretly negotiate with the World Chamber of Commerce about this. Just tell them that I said it, and they will naturally cooperate. Yes, the two replied in unison. Hong Qi then cupped his hands with a fiery gaze and said, Master, the Shi family is about to ascend the throne of Huaxia in a few days. I, Shi Xiaotian, would like to invite you. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, from today onwards, I won't directly intervene in the affairs of the secular world. You are also not allowed to interfere in the affairs of the secular world of Huaxia. At the same time, send people to warn the various sects in Huaxia that they are not allowed to intervene, or else they will have to bear the consequences. Let the secular world solve its own affairs, and the cultivation world must gradually break away from the secular world. This is my ultimate goal. You just need to pay attention in secret. Call back all the people protecting Shi Wenguang and pass on my words to Shi Wenguang. Let him properly govern this suffering country and let the people of the world recuperate and live a good life. Chapter 801. After reaching a certain height, one's perspective and way of thinking would change to a certain extent. He was no longer the little disciple who was struggling to survive in the cultivation world. Back then, he naturally wanted his territory to be as big and powerful as possible, and his ambition was extremely exuberant. But now, he was already standing at the peak of the cultivation world, and the entire world was under his observation. Was there any meaning in fighting with the people of the world? He could more or less understand by Changchun's thoughts. After reaching a certain height, the only thing worth looking up at was a higher place. Thinking back to how childish it was to ask Shi Wenguang to help him conquer the world, now that the entire world was under his feet, what was there to fight for? There was no point. In a small town that could not be considered prosperous, in a house that had been freshly painted. In the living room, Yu Changgui and Shui Ernyang, who were still in good spirits, were talking to Chu Ping. Chu Ping had a bashful look on her face, while Bai Suzhen smiled and did not say anything. In the courtyard, Yu Qianqiu looked at Yu Wuqiu, who had turned from a child to a tall young man, and sighed. He felt that he owed this family too much. He continuously told Yu Wuqiu about some things. Yu Wuqiu was also filled with admiration towards this elder brother of his. Even though he rarely met his elder brother, after living in Utopia for so many years, he naturally knew how amazing his elder brother was. Ordinary people could not compare to him at all. By now, Yu Qianqiu had thought things through. He could not protect this family forever. They were people from different worlds, and they should have their own lives. Just like how Bai Changchun treated the 4 great families, they still had to walk their own paths. As a result, Yu Qianqiu spent a great deal of effort to find a simple and honest town, bought a house, and brought his family out. It was obvious that Yu Changgui and Shui Ernyang were very happy about this. Originally, Yu Changgue wanted to bring his family back to Swallow City. However, Yu Qianqiu considered that he had caused too much of a ruckus in Swallow City back then. Everyone in the cultivation world knew that he was from there. If his family returned, they would inevitably attract the covetous eyes of those with ill intentions. After some persuasion, Yu Changgue finally agreed to go to a strange place and start a new life with his family. When the time was right, he would return to his family. The family had told each other everything that needed to be said. Yu Qianqiu led by Suzhen and Chu Ping'er to bid farewell to the rest of the family and left. In Utopia's ethereal palace, Chu Ping'er, who had finally met Yu Qianqiu, naturally wouldn't let him off. In the room that was filled with the light of spring, King Xiang met the goddess. The two of them had a great battle that lasted for a long time. After that, the two of them were affectionate for an entire day. When Chu Ping'er fell asleep from exhaustion after a few battles, Yu Qianqiu sneaked out of the room. There was no other reason. Previously, Bai Suzhen had hinted to him that she had something to look for him. However, she was dragged away by Chu Ping'er to do strenuous exercises. In the darkness of the night, Yu Qianqiu arrived at the cliff outside Ethereal Palace. Bai Suzhen, who was dressed in white, was waiting for him there. The two of them stood side by side, enduring the gentle chill of the night wind. Yu Qianqiu tilted his head and asked, "What's the matter?" Bai Suzhen smiled faintly and took out a sword from her storage bag. She handed it over and said, "I've already deciphered the array formation inside." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He took the sword and took a look. It was the Green Destiny sword that he had gotten from Onquansung back then. Caressing the ice-cold body of the sword, Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled bitterly. If it was in the past, this sword would have been a good item to him. But now, it was really of little value. With a danged sound, Yu Qianqiu flicked the sword with his fingers and let out a crisp sound. He raised the sword and sighed. This sword originally belonged to your Fox clan. Back then, Xiao Shui had abandoned it. Now that it has landed in your hands, it can be considered as returning to its rightful owner. Bai Suzhen understood the meaning behind his words and asked in surprise, "You don't want it anymore?" Yu Qianqiu shook his head and said, "I won't hide it from you. I no longer have a use for this item. I have a better one." As he spoke, he took her hand and stuffed it into her hand. He chuckled and said, "I can't let you work hard for nothing. I'll give it to you." Bai Suzhen stared at the sword in her hand in a daze. Yu Qianqiu immediately asked anxiously, "What's wrong? Are you unhappy?" Bai Suzhen shook her head silently and bit her lips. "Since you don't need it anymore, I think I want to send it back to my Fox clan." Yu Qianqiu heaved a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "No problem. You can decide what's yours. When do you want to leave? I'll send you there. How about now?" After hesitating for a while, Bai Suzhen shook her head again. It was unknown what she was worried about. Yu Qianqiu paused and did not force her. He said with a smile, "When you want to go back, just tell me. I can accompany you anytime." Bai Suzhen nodded with a gloomy expression. She suddenly raised her head and said, "There's something else I need to tell you." "Ha! If you have something to say, just say it," said Yu Qianqiu with a smile. Bai Suzhen said slowly, "You know about Xiao Wanqing and Qin Feng's son." Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, "I know. You're talking about that kid, Qin Shuo. He can already run around in Utopia. I even gave him a gift." "What's wrong with him?" Bai Suzhen said with a serious expression. "Xiao Wanqing looked for me a few times. She wanted to bring her son out. She said that she wanted him to live like an ordinary person. But I rejected her and said that I'll wait for you to come back before making a decision." Yu Qianqiu's brows twitched slightly. He said in a low voice, "What does Qin Feng mean?" Bai Suzhen shook her head and said, Chen Feng never said anything. Tell her that I know about this. When I'm done with the matters outside, I'll personally send them out. Yu Qianqiu said as he looked around Utopia under the night sky. He sighed and said, someone's heart is unstable. Looks like I've done something that I shouldn't have. Return everyone's natal primordial spirits to them. Bai Suzhen looked around and said in surprise, is it safe to do this? Yu Qianqiu sighed and said, I don't need to use this method anymore. Return them to them. Forcefully controlling them isn't a long-term solution. The sooner we discover the problem, the sooner we can solve it. Bai Suzhen stared at him silently for a while. She nodded slowly and said, I understand what you mean. The two of them stood quietly for a while. A tired expression appeared on Yu Qianqiu's face. He turned around and said with a faint smile, you can go back first. I want to be alone for a while. Bai Suzhen didn't say anything else and left quietly. Yu Qianqiu stood alone at the edge of the cliff. He stood there until daybreak in the east. No one knew what he was thinking. After shaking his head slightly, he slowly closed his eyes again. The eyebrows on his calm face suddenly twitched. He suddenly opened his eyes, and there was a hint of worry in them. During this period of time, whenever he was free, he would worry about Bai Changchun's safety in the netherworld. He couldn't help but try to find Bai Changchun's location. What made him feel strange was that he could find Bai Changchun in the past, but this time, he had lost contact with Bai Changchun. Logically speaking, this was impossible. Even if something happened to Bai Changchun, the silver ball should still be there. But this time, he couldn't even sense the silver ball. What happened to the old fellow? Could something really have happened to him? The more Yu Qianqiu thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. With the old fellow's abilities, ordinary netherworld generals wouldn't be a match for him unless he met an expert like the Emperor of the Netherworld. Could it be that the old fellow really had a conflict with the Emperor of the Netherworld? Or did something happen to the Netherworld? He really wanted to go to the Netherworld to take a look, but he couldn't. He originally had a chance, but unfortunately, Bai Changchun didn't follow Yu Qianqiu's advice and throw out a few silver balls for no reason. He didn't have the guts to let Yu Qianqiu go through the gate of the Netherworld. He had long heard of the power of the passageway to the Netherworld. It could refine all kinds of life energy. Unless he had already forged an immortal body, he wouldn't be able to pass through it with his mortal body. Going from the immortal realm to the Netherworld. His current cultivation level hadn't reached the stage where he could reintegrate his 3 souls and 7 spirits. He still couldn't withstand the power of the passageway to the immortal realm. If he wasn't careful, his soul might scatter and he would die. Just as he was anxiously wandering around, Yu Qianqiu's eyes suddenly lit up. He clapped his hands and said, "Old monster, how could I have forgotten about him?" He suddenly remembered the silver ball he had given to Immortal Lord Crocodile. Hadn't Immortal Lord Crocodile gone to the Netherworld? He immediately stood on the cliff and closed his eyes to sense Immortal Lord Crocodile's location. After a while, Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes and exclaimed in surprise. He had indeed sensed the silver ball he had given to Immortal Lord Crocodile, but the spatial location didn't seem to be the one Bai Changchun was in the Netherworld. Could it be that the old monster had really returned to the immortal realm? Yu Qianqiu rubbed his chin and his eyes darted around. He was indeed a little tempted and was considering whether to go to the immortal realm. In the end, he felt that he should first fuse with the true Samadhi fire. Otherwise, he would be like an ant in the immortal realm, where there were many strong cultivators. Having the true Samadhi fire would be good for self-defense. After making up his mind, he immediately returned to Obedient Island. For the next half a month, Yu Qianqiu had been cooped up in the big house on Obedient Island, thinking of ways to fuse with the true Samadhi fire. Lady Mu didn't disturb him. However, sadly, he found that although the 3 flames could be mixed together, it was still far from the so-called fusion. With his current cultivation, he couldn't fuse the three flames into one. He couldn't help but think of immortal Lord Crocodile's words. Indeed, it was difficult to fuse them without sufficient cultivation. But if it was really as immortal Lord Crocodile had said, and he had to be an immortal emperor to fuse them, then he would have to wait until he could cultivate the true Samadhi fire. On this day, Yu Qianqiu, who had been in seclusion for a whole month, finally walked out of the big house. With his hands behind his back, he walked around Obedient Island again and again. Since he hadn't succeeded in fusing with the true Samadhi fire, he was now considering whether he should take the risk and go to the immortal realm. Lady Mu watched him silently, not daring to disturb him. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu, who had his head buried in his hands, suddenly clapped his hands and said, "Let's go, I'm not afraid." With that, he disappeared from the 1,000-mile lake. Chapter 802. In the tranquil valley, there was lush greenery everywhere. All kinds of unknown wildflowers bloomed beautifully, and chickadees flew and landed happily among the vegetation. The fresh air was refreshing. Yu Qianqiu, who suddenly appeared in the valley, was on guard at first, then gradually relaxed. He looked around in shock. This was the celestial realm. It seemed no different from the human world. However, after taking a few steps, he felt the difference. The spirit qi in the air here was obviously richer than in the human world. Yu Qianqiu frowned as he stared at a big tree on the slope of the valley. There was a bird's nest on it. He looked around and leaped onto the big tree in a flash. He poked his head inside and was immediately startled by the chirping of birds. He saw 7 or 8 little birds waiting to be fed. Their eyes had yet to open, and their feathers were not fully grown yet. They were all squawking. They probably thought Yu Qianqiu was their mother who was out looking for food. Yu Qianqiu's mouth twitched. He reached out and pushed the birds away from the nest. There was a small silver ball lying inside. King old monster, I told you to find a beautiful place to throw it, but I didn't tell you to throw it in a bird's nest. Yu Qianqiu muttered for a while. He was about to leave with the small silver ball when he suddenly paused. He realized that it was quite hidden in the bird's nest, so he threw it back into the bird's nest. He did not remember how he had scolded Immortal Lord Crocodile. What he did not know was that Immortal Lord Crocodile did as he said and threw the silver ball in a beautiful place. But Immortal Lord Crocodile did not expect a bird to like things that glowed. It ended up bringing the silver ball to its nest. After leaving the big tree, he flew to the opposite valley and looked around. There was a towering stone mountain not far from the valley. There were many buildings at the foot of the mountain, and many people were gathered there. Some were even flying there. Yu Qianqiu was considering whether to go over and take a look when he suddenly saw someone flying past him. He was slightly surprised to find that the person was only in the early stage of soul formation. He gritted his teeth and flew over. When they got there, they discovered that it was similar to a trade center. There were shops selling things everywhere. After taking a few glances, he realized that the shop was filled with a dazzling array of items, and he basically didn't recognize any of them. Yu Qianqiu looked around and realized that no one was paying attention to this foreign visitor. He looked ahead and saw a group of people gathered under a large flag. Most of them were soul formation cultivators, and there were even tribulation transcendence cultivators. There weren't many people whose cultivation he couldn't see through. Now he was relieved, and he followed the people passing by to join in the fun, wanting to see what was going on. However, the people in front of him were too crowded, and he couldn't squeeze through it all. He wanted to fly up and take a look, but no one else did so. If he did, it would be too conspicuous. Just as he was about to use brute force to force his way through, he suddenly heard someone shouting from inside, "Who else?" I. Excited voices came from the crowd, and they all raised their hands. Yu Qianqiu looked around. Although he didn't know what was going on, he didn't want to stand out too much. He immediately raised his hand. No matter what, he had to say, "I, first." He raised his hand, and his head swayed left and right. He couldn't see clearly what was going on inside. Because he was too engrossed, the others had already put their hands down, but he still raised his hand and peeked into the gaps of the necks in front of him. The person standing behind him couldn't stand it anymore. He immediately patted his shoulder. Yu Qianqiu raised his hand and suddenly turned around. He said warily, "What are you trying to do?" The person was startled. He pointed at his raised hand, and then pointed around. "Brother, put it down." Yu Qianqiu looked around and immediately withdrew his hand. Fortunately, no one's attention was on him. With someone talking, Yu Qianqiu immediately stuck to him. He smiled. "May I ask what's going on inside, brother?" As he spoke, he began to size up the person. This was an ordinary-looking middle-aged man wearing a gray robe. There was nothing special about him, but his cultivation was at the final stage of the soul formation stage. The person was startled again. "You don't know what's going on. Then why did you raise your hand?" Yu Qianqiu laughed and explained. "It's precisely because I don't know that I raised my hand to see what's going on." The person was speechless. He shook his head. "The Bada Chamber of Commerce is recruiting." "Recruiting? What does the Bada Chamber of Commerce do? What kind of people are they recruiting?" Yu Qianqiu turned around and asked curiously. The person was instantly dumbfounded. There were also a few surprised gazes from the side. The person didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The Bada Chamber of Commerce has a pass to do business in the Netherworld. They are recruiting people to do business in the Netherworld. People like us can earn a lot of spirit stones just by following the Bada Chamber of Commerce to the Netherworld. Isn't that why you're here? To the Netherworld. Yu Qianqiu's eyes instantly lit up. Wasn't this exactly what he wanted? Suddenly, his gaze paused. Behind the crowd, in front of him, there was a burly man carrying a flag. The words "Si Tong" were embroidered on it. The tall and sturdy man stuck the flagpole down and shouted, "Recruiting. Me!" Yu Qianqiu shouted energetically and raised his hand high up. The person who was talking to him didn't know what was going on. He also raised his hand without hesitation and shouted, "Me." But when he turned around, he was instantly dumbfounded. The crowd of onlookers also didn't know what was going on behind them. However, when they heard someone shouting, "Recruiting," and then someone shouting, "Me," impatiently, many people immediately raised their hands and shouted, "Me." When they turned around, they were all dumbfounded. The burly man holding the Si Tong flag was also stunned. He didn't think that so many people would come to sign up for Si Tong today. The previous few times, there wasn't even a single person signing up. He immediately pointed at the people who had raised their hands and laughed. You, and you, the Chamber of Commerce has the same rules. Since you've signed up, you can't go back on your word. Otherwise, don't blame me, Nan Tianlong, for being impolite. Ha! Those who raised their hands, come over here. The person who was talking to Yu Qianqiu slowly turned around. With a twisted face, he stared at Yu Qianqiu and said word by word, "Who told you to shout?" Because of this sentence, those who had raised their hands immediately found the culprit. Their murderous gazes all focused on Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu immediately felt a huge pressure. He looked around and asked weakly, "Is there a problem?" "Cut the crap. All of you, come over here and follow me. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." The burly man carried the flag on his shoulder and waved his arm at them while laughing. The group of people looked as if their parents had died. They reluctantly followed him. The burly man carrying the flag kept urging them. Those who didn't raise their hands at the back burst into wild laughter. They laughed so hard that they beat their feet and stomped their chests. Yu Qianqiu was mixed in the dozens of moving people. He was a little shocked. What trouble did he get into? He asked the person who had spoken to him earlier. Unfortunately, that person ignored him. The group of people was led by the burly man through 2 streets. They arrived in front of a large restaurant with a golden signboard that said, Sitong. The guard at the door immediately ran over to take the flag from the burly man. He looked at the group of people who had followed him and asked, Nan Tianlong, who are these people? The burly man called Nan Tianlong laughed. Of course they're the people we recruited. 37 people. Just a moment is enough. There's no need to trouble yourself anymore. This. The guard was at a loss for words. His face was full of disbelief. Nan Tianlong waved his hand at the crowd. What are you waiting for? Come in with me. The group of people followed him in. They were led to a large field in the side courtyard. The field was not small. The surrounding flower beds were also very lush. It looked like a large business. However, there were not many people around. It seemed a little deserted. All of you stay here obediently. If anyone dares to run, you can try it. Nan Tianlong threw down this sentence and went to the back courtyard. At this moment, everyone's eyes were on Yu Qianqiu. Someone sneered. There's no need to say anything. This person must be an agent of the Sitong Chamber of Commerce. He purposely tricked us. Yu Qianqiu was holding back a stomach full of grievances. He didn't know what was going on. When he heard someone mocking him, he immediately looked over. It was only a mid-stage soul formation cultivator. He immediately became furious. Bastard, you must be tired of living. Say it again if you have the ability. Since he dared to say such harsh words, everyone immediately checked his cultivation. In the end, no one could see through his cultivation. Everyone immediately became more obedient and didn't dare to look at him with disgust. The person who spoke to Yu Qianqiu before cupped his hands. I am Tao Zhong. Looking at your cultivation, you should be an immortal cultivator, right? With your cultivation, you could do anything. Why did you come to this business? I am Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu also cupped his hands. I really don't know what is going on. Brother Tao, please tell me in detail so I know what kind of trouble I've caused. Everyone had a look of disbelief when they heard this. Tao Zhong looked at him doubtfully, but he still roughly explained the cause of the matter. It turned out that the Sitong Chamber of Commerce and the Bada Chamber of Commerce were business rivals. They once fought over a permit to do business in the Netherworld. In the end, the permit fell into the hands of the Bada Chamber of Commerce. It should be known that doing business with the Netherworld was very profitable. As a result, the Bada Chamber of Commerce quickly expanded. Although the Sitong Chamber of Commerce later obtained a permit to do business with the Netherworld at all costs, because the Bada Chamber of Commerce took the initiative and kept suppressing the Sitong Chamber of Commerce, it made the Sitong Chamber of Commerce unable to purchase the items needed by the Netherworld. Over the years, the Sitong Chamber of Commerce had been forced to the point of collapse by the Bada Chamber of Commerce. However, this time, the Sitong Chamber of Commerce encountered a once-in-100 years opportunity to turn things around. The Divine Ruin Realm that opened once every 100 years was about to open. As long as one was lucky, one could collect many rare treasures needed by the Netherworld and the Immortal Realm. As long as the Chamber of Commerce that had the qualifications to do business with the Netherworld paid enough money, they could enter the Divine Ruin Realm with other sects that paid to try their luck. Chapter 803. It was true that Sitong had a past to trade with the Netherworld, but the current Sitong had fallen to the point where he could not take out the money to enter the Divine Ruin Realm. This sum of money was not a small sum, no less than 50 million divine Great Spirit stones. However, the pass in Si Tong's hand was still very valuable. Si Tong also understood that if he did not seize this opportunity to turn things around, that pass would be useless. Hence, he gritted his teeth and borrowed 50 million divine Great Spirit stones. If he could not return it on time, he would have to use that pass as compensation. Even though he had collected enough money, there was still a relatively harsh restriction to enter the Divine Ruin Realm. That was, each family could only send 30 people at most, and these 30 people's cultivation could only be below the Immortal Realm. Those who had reached the Immortal Realm were not allowed to participate. With so many chambers of commerce and sects participating at the same time, and in a different world, fighting for treasures was inevitable. Those who were able to risk their lives for the various sects and chambers of commerce were naturally the disciples of the main family. Outsiders would not take this risk for you. In this way, the problem arose. Si Tong had long fallen, and the disciples under him had either died, scattered, or left. Although he still held the name of a chamber of commerce, the total number of people added up to less than 5. Thus, the scene of Si Tong recruiting appeared. Si Tong had been recruiting for more than half a month, but not a single person had come. Because even if one could return from the Divine Ruin Realm alive, if you helped Si Tong, Bada would not let you off. Who would do such a strenuous, unrewarding, and life-threatening thing? If not for the rules of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, Si Tong would have been destroyed by Bada long ago. Seeing that the Divine Ruin Realm would open in 3 days, some chambers of commerce and sects had already begun to gather outside the Divine Ruin Realm, but Si Tong still had not recruited a single person. With Tao Zhong's words, Yu Qianqiu nodded his head, indicating that he understood. Speaking of this Divine Ruin Realm, Yu Qianqiu more or less had some understanding. Back when he was chatting with Huang Tian in the Eastern Holy Land's Yellow Earth City, he had heard Huang Tian mention it. This Divine Ruin Realm was said to be a cultivation land opened by the ancient god, but for some reason, it was abandoned by the ancient god. The spiritual energy inside was very abundant, and it was rich in all kinds of treasures. However, it was also extremely dangerous inside, with all kinds of ferocious beasts. According to Huang Tian, the Divine Ruin Realm would only open once every 100 years. After 3 months, it would close and only open again in the next 100 years. However, Huang Tian did not mention anything about the various sects participating in the opening of the Divine Ruin Realm. As Yu Qianqiu was thinking about this, he suddenly frowned and asked everyone, "Then why are all of you rushing to register at Bada? It seems like you really don't know anything." Tao Zhong smiled bitterly and said, "The reason why we are rushing to register with Bada is not to enter the Divine Ruin Realm, but to help Bada do business in the Netherworld. Every time he successfully completed a transaction, he would be rewarded with 10 top-grade spirit stones. Although the chances of us accepting the Bada Chamber of Commerce's employment are slim, we'll be out of luck if you coax us like this. What's there to be unlucky about? Since no one wants to go, it's fine if they don't go. They can't possibly kidnap you into the Divine Ruin Realm or kill you, right?" Yu Qianqiu said disapprovingly. The group of people immediately revealed exaggerated expressions of speechlessness. Tao Zhong did not know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "No matter how much Si Tong has declined, they are still a member of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. The Chamber of Commerce Alliance pays attention to credibility. When dealing with the Chamber of Commerce, one must value credibility. Once they agree, they cannot go back on their word. Otherwise, even if Si Tong does not do anything to us, the Chamber of Commerce Alliance will not let us off. If the Chamber of Commerce Alliance wants to kill someone, how many people in the entire immortal world can escape? Oh my god. Don't tell me you don't even know this." Yu Qianqiu touched his nose awkwardly and said, "That seems to be the case, I almost forgot." Only now did he understand that he had indeed brought a lot of trouble to these guys. Although he was not afraid, it did not mean that others had the capital to not be afraid. At this moment, 3 people came out of the backyard. 2 men and a woman stood in front of everyone. Among them, Nan Tianlong introduced them to everyone. "This is our association's president, this is the young lady." Yu Qianqiu quickly scanned through their cultivation. Apart from the young lady who was at the soul formation final stage, he couldn't see through the president and Nan Tianlong's cultivation. It was clear that they had reached the immortal realm. The president looked like an outstanding person. No wonder his daughter was not bad. Yu Qianqiu could not help but take a few more looks at the president's daughter, who was biting her lips and not saying a word. Other than her petite figure, everything else about her was not bad. When everyone saw the president of Xitong appear, no one actually spoke to him. Clearly, they were not very interested in Xitong. The president's face showed a trace of bitterness. He waved his hand at Nan Tianlong and said, "Xitong is already like this, the president will not grow up, so don't mention it." Then he cupped his hands at everyone and said with a warm smile, "This humble one is Mu Bing, this is my daughter Mu Tianjiao. Thank you everyone for coming to support Xitong at this crucial time. As long as Xitong can get through this crisis, I will definitely remember everyone's great kindness." Someone in the crowd immediately muttered in a low voice, "Do you think we wanted to support you? If we weren't forced?" Although the voice was soft, with everyone's cultivation, how could they not hear it? Mu Bing suddenly turned around and shouted, "Tianlong, what's going on? Could it be that you forced them to come? Have you forgotten the rules of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance that we cannot force anyone to buy or sell?" Nan Tianlong hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Master, it's not like that. They took the initiative to come." Mu Bing frowned slightly. His disciple would definitely not lie to him. He slowly turned around and his gaze swept across the crowd. What exactly is going on? Is there anyone who is willing to tell me the details? I'd rather watch the 4 links collapse than do something like forcing people to buy and sell. Everyone looked at each other. In the end, Tao Zhong stood up and cupped his hands at Mu Bing. "President Mu, this can't be considered as a forced purchase. It's actually a misunderstanding." He pointed at Yu Qianqiu and explained the misunderstanding, causing Yu Qianqiu to feel quite embarrassed. After Mu Bing understood the situation, he was silent for a long time. This was a difficult decision for Xitong at this crucial time. After all, it wasn't Xitong's fault. It was reasonable no matter where it went. Why not just try to be clever and make things worse? Xitong will not force anyone. Mu Bing finally said this. Nan Tianlong's expression changed slightly. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Yu Qianqiu also secretly shook his head. No wonder Xitong's business was like this. There was no such thing as a business without evil. Everyone was about to bid their farewells when Mu Tianjiao suddenly stepped forward and said, "But rules are rules. I, Xitong, did not force you. You were the ones who took the initiative to join us, so how can you go back on your word? Do you really think the rules of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance are just for show?" Everyone's eyes focused on Mu Bing. Mu Bing frowned and said, "Tianjiao." Mu Tianjiao's delicate face flashed with stubbornness. She immediately cupped her hands and interrupted, "Father, we also have to abide by the Chamber of Commerce Alliance's rules. If we let them go, what if someone comes to the Chamber of Commerce Alliance and accuses us of going back on our word and not hiring them? I'm afraid we won't even be able to find someone to testify for us. This is a critical time. We have to be on guard against thieves and rascals." Mu Bing was speechless. Nan Tianlong also immediately cupped his hands and said, "Master, junior sister is right. We need to be on guard against thieves and rascals." Mu Tianjiao took this opportunity to announce loudly, "As long as everyone here accepts my, Xitong's, employment, Si Tong, am willing to take out 1/10 of the estimated value of the treasures obtained in the Divine Ruin Realm." The moment these words were spoken, a commotion broke out among the crowd. This temptation was too great. One had to know that in order to enter the Divine Ruin Realm, the various chambers of commerce were willing to pay 50 million divine grade spirit stones. Under normal circumstances, they would be able to get double the return. In other words, the estimated value of the treasures obtained was at least 100 million divine grade spirit stones. 1/10 of 100 million divine grade spirit stones was equivalent to 10 million divine grade spirit stones. If this sum of money was divided among the people here, each person would receive roughly 300,000 divine grade spirit stones. Compared to the 10 top grade spirit stones they would receive in a single trip to the netherworld, it was an astronomical figure. Not to mention, the trip to the netherworld was not entirely smooth sailing, there were still dangers. Nan Tianlong sneaked a peek at his master, seeing that his junior sister was willing to take out such a large amount of benefits without asking for his master's permission, but he found that his master was deep in thought. Seeing that many people were tempted, Mu Tianjiao continued, "Of course, Si Tong will not force everyone, I will still give everyone a choice. Those who do not want to accept my, Si Tong's employment, can leave a statement before you leave. Those who stay, I will also give you a guarantee, in case something happens that cannot be explained clearly. Whether you want to stay or leave, it's up to you." This time, everyone was stumped. Stay. It was too dangerous. Don't stay. 300,000 divine grade spirit stones. Where would they find such a fat profit? This was money that they might not be able to earn even if they worked their whole lives. Indeed, profit and risk coexisted. This made it difficult for everyone to choose. Yu Qianqiu did not consider this, he was not short of money. Instead, he was sizing up Mu Tianjiao, noticing that this girl was indeed bolder than her father, using both kindness and authority, a person who could make decisions. After everyone made their choice, 9 out of the 37 people left. These were all people with families, and they were worried that their families would suffer retaliation from the 8 Pagoda trading firm, so they chose to leave. The others threw caution to the wind for the sake of 300,000 divine grade spirit stones. As long as they got the money, they would immediately run as far as they could, prepared to never meet the 8 Pagoda trading firm again. Yu Qianqiu did not leave either, receiving a jade archive from Mu Tianjiao. Inside it was a guarantee from Si Tong, written personally by her. The general idea was that after entering the Divine Ruin Realm, they were willing to split 1/10 of the estimated value of the treasures they obtained equally with those who accepted Si Tong's employment. It was not that he wanted to earn this money, but that even if he left, he might not be able to find an opportunity to go to the netherworld immediately. Accepting this employment could also take the opportunity to inquire about more useful information, not to mention he also wanted to see what was going on inside the Divine Ruin Realm. If he found something amiss after entering, he could just leave at any time, there was nothing to worry about. Chapter 804. 9 out of the 37 people had left, leaving 28 people behind. The number of people who could enter the Divine Ruin Realm could not exceed 30. These people were about the same, but a few of them had slightly lower cultivation, only at the early stage of soul formation. Although there were already 28 people, 1 or 2 less people was very likely to avoid a large loss. Mu Bing sighed slightly. This was something that could not be helped. It was already good to be able to recruit so many people. If it was not for the misunderstanding caused by that person, no one would have come to the 4 links at all. Mu Bing's gaze fell on Yu Qianqiu. He really had to thank this person, but then he was stunned. He found that he could not see through this person's cultivation. He walked slowly to Yu Qianqiu's side and said in a deep voice, "Your cultivation is extraordinary. Why did you come to the declining 4 links Chamber of Commerce to have fun?" Mu Tianjiao and Nan Tianlong also discovered Yu Qianzhou's extraordinariness because of Mu Bing's actions. Yu Qianzhou was startled, then understood what the problem was. He immediately smiled and said, "President Mu, you misunderstand. I did not come to your Chamber of Commerce to have fun, but because I accidentally took a panacea that can conceal my cultivation before coming down. My actual cultivation is only at the late stage of soul formation." "Is that so?" Mu Bing's tone and the expression in his eyes were suspicious. He said in a deep voice, "In that case, is it convenient for you to let me investigate?" Yu Qianzhou shrugged indifferently and stretched out a hand. Mu Bing held Yu Qianzhou's hand with some vigilance. After a little investigation, he found that the true essence in Yu Qianzhou's body was still white, not golden immortal essence. He immediately let go of his hand and cupped his fists, saying, "Don't blame me. In fact, the cultivation to enter the divine ruin realm can only be below the immortal realm. If you don't figure it out, even if you reach the divine ruin realm, you won't be able to enter. Please forgive me for offending you." Mu Tianjiao and Nan Tianlong breathed a sigh of relief. Mu Bing's words clearly proved that the other party was not lying. His cultivation was indeed at the soul formation stage. The two of them couldn't help but worry. Now, one less person was a loss. Yu Qianzhou cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Chairman Mu, you're too polite. This is what I should do. If it were me, I would do the same." Mu Bing smiled and nodded, then walked back to stand with Mu Tianjiao and Nan Tianlong. On the surface, they did not say a word, but everyone knew that this family must be secretly discussing something through voice transmission. Yu Qianzhou carefully observed their expressions and suddenly discovered that Mu Bing and Mu Tianjiao seemed to be a little agitated. The father and daughter seemed to have had some kind of argument, but in the end, it seemed that Mu Bing had compromised. However, his expression was not very good. Then, Mu Bing walked over and cupped his hands to everyone, "I'm sorry. I should have let everyone have a good rest first, but the Divine Ruin Realm will open in 3 days. Due to travel issues, we have no choice but to set off immediately. Please be magnanimous and forgive us." As for whether they should rest or not, no one really had any opinion. Tao Zhong took the lead and cupped his hands, "Chairman Mu, you're too polite. This is what we should do." A group of people also echoed. Mu Bing no longer hesitated and quickly took out a palm-sized flying shuttle and threw it into the air. In an instant, it became a giant shuttle in the air. He waved to everyone and said, "Please." A group of people rushed up. Then, the father and daughter and Nan Tianlong also flashed up. The father and daughter guarded the tail of the shuttle, while Nan Tianlong walked to the head. At this time, 2 people flashed up from the Four Links Guild Hall and saluted Mu Bing. Mu Bing smiled faintly and said, "Take good care of the family." The 2 responded in unison and retreated. Mu Bing waved to the front, and Nan Tianlong personally drove the flying shuttle away. Before leaving, Yu Qianzhou looked down and found that there were only a few people left in the huge Four Links Guild Hall. They were really down and out. The flying shuttle flew at an extremely fast speed, breaking through the clouds all the way. Yu Qianzhou looked at the rapidly retreating mountains and rivers and was secretly shocked. This speed was much faster than the limit of his current cultivation. The celestial world was indeed the celestial world. It was extraordinary. Back when he was chatting with Huang Tian in Yellow Soil City, although he asked a lot about the celestial world, it was impossible for him to ask everything. However, he still knew the general framework. The biggest difference between the celestial world and the human world was that everyone could cultivate, regardless of whether they had the potential to cultivate or not. Even ordinary commoners could use the miraculous effects of immortal pills to lay a foundation for cultivation. However, the limitations of talent were often not something that ordinary immortal pills could overcome. Most commoners without the potential to cultivate would usually be stuck at the foundation establishment stage. Those families with a bit more wealth could often spend a lot of money to buy better immortal pills to forcefully increase their cultivation. It was even possible to break through to the tribulation passing stage, but it was difficult to go further. After all, talent was hard to surpass. Those with better cultivation talent were all recruited by the major sects because after these people joined the sect, they had the chance to break through to the immortal realm with the help of immortal pills. In the celestial world, no sect would recruit disciples who had no chance to break through to the immortal realm. Disciples of major families with slightly less talent and limited prospects could still help the family do things, such as the various chambers of commerce. Without the backing of a major family, most of them would be like the people on this flying shuttle. Their cultivation was very awkward. They entered the soul formation stage but couldn't break through to the small immortal stage, so they became rogue cultivators in the celestial world, relying on work to earn spirit stones to cultivate. In the celestial world, be it immortals or commoners, the currency used for transactions was spirit stones. There was no such thing as gold and silver. Overall, the situation in the celestial world was much better than in the human world. Even among the commoners, it was rare to find someone with a lifespan of less than 100 years, unless something unexpected happened. After all, there were more fights and killings in the celestial world than in the human world. After flying for nearly 2 days, Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He didn't know how big the celestial world was, but it was definitely many times bigger than the human world. With such a fast speed, if he were to fly in the human world, he probably wouldn't be able to count the number of laps he would have to fly around with 2 hands. But here, he heard from others that it would take almost half a day to reach the outside of the ruins of God. The closer they got to the ruins of God, the more flying shuttles there were. At this time, there were 5 or 6 flying shuttles flying around Xitong at the same time. Everyone was sizing each other up with hostility. As for those who were flying faster, although they left later, they arrived first. With a xiao sound, they passed by them. Just as one passed by, with a xiao sound, a stream of light flashed past, and another passed by. This kind of scene where the heroes of the world gathered and hundreds of airships competed to be the first actually made Yu Qianqiu's blood boil. Only now did he realize that the human world was really too small. He had been a frog at the bottom of a well for so long, yet he didn't know that this was the place where he could truly show off his abilities. Whether it was a hero or a man, it was a gathering of heroes to see. Yu Qianqiu took a deep breath and suppressed the excitement in his heart. He elbowed Tao Zhong beside him and asked, "Old Tao, did Xitong offend them before? Why are they all looking at us like that?" Tao Zhong rolled his eyes at him, but these 2 days, he had already gotten used to this guy's ignorance, always asking idiotic questions. He said in a low voice, "Xitong isn't even ranked in the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. How could they have offended so many people? If they had really offended so many people, they would have collapsed long ago. How could they have lasted until now? Everyone wants to enter the ruins of God, and in there, all the rules are fake. Fighting, killing, and snatching things is a common occurrence. Everyone may look fine now, but once we enter the ruins of God, we will immediately become enemies. It's normal for them to look at us like this. Take a closer look, they look at others the same way." Hearing him say this, Yu Qianqiu looked around and found that it was true. He rubbed his chin and imagined. So in the ruins of God, fighting, killing, and snatching things was a common occurrence. This was a little interesting. The human world was too small, and it was his own territory, so it was not convenient for him to go all out. There seemed to be a lot of people in the immortal world. I haven't had a good time in a long time. I like it. After flying at high speed for almost 2.5 days, the flying shuttle's speed finally slowed down, and it was slowly descending. Yu Qianqiu quickly poked his head out to take a look. Below him was a vast granite mountain range that stretched as far as the eye could see. There was almost no greenery. There was a huge platform that was obviously man-made, and it was bustling with people. At this time, there were countless flying shuttles descending in the air, and there were even people in all kinds of clothes flying back and forth in the air. It was a busy scene. Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up as he excitedly rubbed his palms together. He found that this place was even more King lively than the large-scale exchanges in his previous life, and he was a person who liked crowds the most. He firmly believed that the more people there were, the more lively the place was, and that was the place to make a fortune. There were too many people below, so it was impossible to land. Mu Bing called for everyone to come down first, and then put away the flying shuttle in the air. After Nan Tianlong received the instructions, he left alone, and no one knew what he was going to do. Everyone floated in the air and waited. Yu Qianzhou was almost dazzled by the people below. His gaze landed on a huge stone mountain in the distance. At the foot of the mountain was a large cave with a diameter of tens of meters, and a large group of golden-clothed people were guarding the entrance of the cave. Yu Qianzhou's pupils constricted. The clothes of those golden-clothed people seemed to be the same as the envoy he had seen on the Immortal Ascension platform. Looking around, he discovered that there were many golden-clothed people scattered in the air, silently watching the scene below. Not long after, Nan Tianlong quickly flew back and cupped his hands towards Mu Bing. "Master, we found our stall, please follow me." Mu Bing nodded to everyone. The father and daughter pair led everyone to follow Nan Tianlong and stopped at a relatively remote place. Although it was relatively remote, the flow of people was not small at all. There were many sheds set up below, and many more were still being built. Nan Tianlong flashed into the crowd below, and in a small open space between two sheds, he cupped his hands towards the surrounding people and shouted, "Everyone, please make way. This is the space allocated by our 4 Links Chamber of Commerce. We want to set up our stall, please do us the honor." The people at the side were quite cooperative, and immediately squeezed out of the small area and returned to the main road. Mu Bing quickly led everyone to the open space, and Nan Tianlong immediately took out a large amount of bamboo wood from his storage bracelet, preparing to set up the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce's stall. Chapter 805. Nan Tianlong, on the other hand, was a down-to-earth and hard-working person. He carried a large piece of wood and began to drive it into the ground. Suddenly, someone muttered, "Why does our territory seem to be much smaller than theirs?" Everyone was taken aback and looked at the stall opposite them. It seemed to be a lot smaller. It seemed to be missing a third of the area. Mu Bing frowned and said, "Everyone paid the same amount of money, so it stands to reason that the size of the stall should be the same. This has always been the case. Tianlong, what's going on?" Nan Tianlong, who had just picked up a large piece of wood, was startled when he heard this. He threw away the things in his hands and scratched his head awkwardly. "Master, I'll go take a look." He strode to the crowded passageway, then glared at him and walked towards the stall next door. Everyone looked at each other speechlessly, not knowing what was going on. At this moment, Nan Tianlong's angry roar suddenly came from next door. "Qi Fengxing, hurry up and give up your spot. I paid the money, what right do you have to take our spot?" The flow of people on the temporary street suddenly stopped and looked over. Mu Bing and Mu Tianzhao's expressions changed greatly. They saw a slightly chubby man come out from next door, followed by 2 people. Nan Tianlong followed them angrily and kept shouting, "Qi Fengxing, hurry up and give up your spot." The man called Qi Fengxing did not even bother to pay attention to Nan Tianlong. He pinched the thin mustache on his lips and stared at Mu Bing with a teasing smile. "President Mu, there aren't many of you anyway. Why do you have to occupy such a large territory? No matter what, we come from the same place. We should help each other, don't you think so?" Mu Bing immediately shouted in a deep voice, "Qi Fengxing, don't go too far. This is not a place for you to behave atrociously." A group of people immediately gathered on the street to watch the show. Qi Fengxing's gaze turned cold. He glanced at Yu Qianqiu and the others and coldly snorted. Mu Bing, don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. If you behave yourself, you might be able to get back some of your capital. Otherwise, I guarantee that your people won't be able to enter the Divine Ruin Realm. Everyone's expressions changed drastically. The other party was clearly telling everyone that after entering the Divine Ruin Realm, they would attack the people of 8 Advancement Society and 4 Link Society. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. Why did it feel like he had met a landlord tyrant? However, it was none of his business, and he was not familiar with the situation here, so he stood in the crowd and did not say anything. You. Mu Bing was furious, but Mu Tianjiao pulled him back. She looked at Qi Fengxing with disdain and said indifferently, Father, there's no reason to talk to this kind of person. Why bother talking to him? After saying that, he leaped into the air and flew to the side of a golden-robed man in the air. He pointed down and said something, as if he was complaining. Qi Fengxing calmly glanced at her and sneered, Damn girl, you're so stubborn. One day, I'll make you strip naked and serve me honestly. The 2 men behind him suddenly snickered. Yu Qianqiu sighed slightly. It seemed that this guy had already straightened out his connections. Otherwise, he would not be so fearless. As he expected, the golden-robed man in the air glanced down coldly and nodded slightly at Qi Fengxing. Instead, he reprimanded Mu Tianjiao, Get out of my way. Don't interfere with my duty. Otherwise, I'll kill you. Qi Fengxing immediately laughed and cupped his hands at the golden-robed man in the air to express his gratitude. Nan Tianlong immediately shouted, Motherf *Ker, you've gone too far. Just as he was about to make a move, he was stopped by Mu Bing, who had an angry look on his face. Those golden-robed men were not people they could afford to offend. The people from 4 Link Society suddenly felt a little ashamed. Mu Tianjiao, who was in the air, instantly turned pale. Her petite and exquisite body became even more weak and helpless. The golden-robed man shouted again, Get out of the way. Do you want me to make a move? Mu Tianjiao slowly floated away and looked around with a pale face. Suddenly, she saw a group of golden-robed men flying over from afar. She immediately gritted her teeth and flew into the air to stop them. She bowed almost 90 degrees, cupped her fists, and did not get up. She did not say a word. In an instant, everyone below stared at the sky. Mu Bing and Nan Tianlong's expressions changed drastically. Qi Fengxing's expression also changed. The golden-robed man who had reprimanded Mu Tianjiao before also had a change of expression. He quickly flashed over and shouted angrily, How dare you! How dare you block the great commander's way! Get out of the way! The dozen golden-robed men that were flying over had already stopped. Among them, a short-bearded man with a cold expression and a dignified aura waved at the golden-robed man. He then looked at Mu Tianjiao and asked calmly, What's going on? Mu Bing and Nan Tianlong quickly flew into the air, saluting the dignified man. Mu Bing said fearfully, My daughter is ignorant, she shouldn't have offended the great commander. We will return immediately. He pulled Mu Tianjiao. Mu Tianjiao stubbornly shook off her father's hand, and once again bowed to the dignified man. She then cupped her fists and said with grief and indignation, So it's the great commander. I beg the great commander to uphold justice for my 4 Links Chamber of Commerce. The great commander's gaze swept across the surroundings, indifferently saying, Speak. Thank you, great commander. Mu Tianjiao cupped her fists and reported, Although my 4 Links Chamber of Commerce is small, it is still a member of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. We also paid 50 million divine-grade spirit stones to the Immortal Palace to obtain the qualification to enter the Divine Ruin Realm, and obtained a small stall outside the Divine Ruin Realm. This little girl would like to ask the great commander, my 4 links Chamber of Commerce has paid the same amount of money, so why is the Immortal Palace's guard helping others divide my 4 links Chamber of Commerce's stall? If it's because my 4 links Chamber of Commerce paid the same amount of money, please tell us clearly. There is no need to humiliate us in public. My 4 links Chamber of Commerce will naturally give up our stall, we dare not go against the Immortal Palace. Great Commander, please tell us clearly. Qi Fengxing's face was deathly pale, and the golden-robed guard who reprimanded Mu Tianjiao was even paler. Mu Bing and Nan Tianlong were terrified, worried that their daughter had offended the great commander. Once the great commander was enraged, the consequences would be unimaginable. Yu Qinzhou's eyes lit up, his evaluation of Mu Tianjiao rose by a notch. Her words were well-mannered and well-mannered. Unless the great commander ignored the Immortal Palace's reputation, he wouldn't make things difficult for Mu Tianjiao in public. Which stall belongs to your 4 links Chamber of Commerce? The great commander asked. Mu Tianjiao immediately waved her hand, pointing at the stall that was 1/3 smaller than the others. The great commander glanced at her, his gaze turning piercingly cold as he stared at the guard who colluded with Qi Fengxing, asking indifferently, "You're the one on duty here?" "Yes, yes, yes." The guard was so scared that he couldn't speak clearly. The great commander said indifferently, "Do you have anything to explain?" It was this subordinate's oversight. There were too many people and I was too busy. Please forgive me, great commander. The guard was trembling in fear. The great commander nodded slightly, "I see. You can't be blamed. However, it seems that your abilities are limited and you're no longer suitable to serve the Immortal Palace. Men, cripple his cultivation and send him back to where he came from. Great commander, forgive." The guard wanted to beg for mercy, but 2 people had already flashed out from behind the great commander. "Ah!" A miserable scream rang out. His golden robe was stripped off in the blink of an eye. His whole body turned limp and he was carried away by another golden-robed man like a chick. The great commander's gaze turned to the shed that took up more space. One of the people behind him immediately pointed and shouted, "Which Chamber of Commerce does this belong to?" Qi Fengxing hurriedly rushed over, trembling. He was so scared that he couldn't say a word. He only knew how to keep bowing. The great commander stared at him indifferently and said, "This is my fault for not disciplining my subordinates properly. However, you must immediately tear down that shed. Give up the extra space and return it to the 4 links Chamber of Commerce immediately. Can you do that?" "Yes, yes, yes." Qi Fengxing couldn't say anything else other than this one word. The great commander tilted his head slightly and said, "Send people to patrol the area. If such a situation is discovered again, deal with it as an example." "Yes." One of the people behind him immediately flashed away. The great commander's gaze swept over Mu Tianjiao, looking her up and down. Mu Tianjiao immediately bowed and said, "Thank you, great commander, for your decision." When she straightened up, the great commander and his people were already far away. The matter was finally over. Mu Bing and Nan Tianlong were the first to let out a sigh of relief. The former pulled his daughter away and left. Qi Fengxing also returned, trembling, and hurriedly ordered people to tear down the shed. "Junior sister is still the best. I was scared out of my wits." Nan Tianlong immediately praised when he landed. Then, he carried a wooden frame. He was the only one busy, and the people that the others called seemed somewhat indifferent. Mu Tianjiao glanced at everyone and bit her lip. After all, when they were hired, they didn't say that they were going to help Si Tong with chores, so she couldn't say anything. Mu Tianjiao tucked a lock of hair behind her ear, rolled up her sleeves, and carried a thick wooden pillar and got busy. Although this kind of work wasn't tiring with her cultivation, she was petite and delicate. Carrying a large wooden pillar and being a woman was indeed a tragic sight. "Damn it! Yu Qianqiu was speechless. No matter how thick-skinned he was, he really couldn't be thick-skinned when it came to this kind of matter. Thus, he ran over to help. Tao Zhong was startled, but he also followed. When the others saw that the two of them had started working, they couldn't just stand there and help. When Mu Tianzhao passed by Yu Qianqiu with a pile of bamboo sticks in her arms, she suddenly said softly, "Thank you." Yu Qianqiu turned around in surprise, and then waved his hand with a silly smile, indicating that it was no big deal. Everyone worked together, and very quickly, they built a bamboo shed in a short while. Inside the shed, a well-arranged display table was also set up, and all that was left was to display the items for sale. However, it seemed that Si Tong didn't have anything to sell at all, and the shed was empty. After the shed was built, the space inside suddenly became much smaller, and there was no way it could accommodate so many people. After greeting Mu Bing, everyone went out for a walk. Only Mu Bing, his daughter, and Nan Tianlong were left in the shed, discussing their funeral matters. At this moment, Qi Fengxing strolled in with a sullen face. Chapter 806. Shuttling through the bustling crowd, Yu Qianqiu's eyes were fixed on Tao Zhong, asking him all sorts of questions without end. Tao Zhong was really sick and tired of it. He tried several times to shake off Yu Qianqiu, but he found that he couldn't do so no matter how hard he tried. There were several times when he thought he had shaken off Tao Zhong's tail, but he would inadvertently find this guy suddenly asking him questions from behind. Tao Zhong was on the verge of collapsing, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. Little did he know that it was precisely because Yu Qianqiu was familiar with him that he took the opportunity to pat Tao Zhong's shoulder, sacrificing a drop of blood essence to pat Tao Zhong's back. The main reason was to make it convenient for him to contact Tao Zhong, afraid that he would forget about Tao Zhong and not be able to find him. More importantly, if Tao Zhong had any questions, he could look for Tao Zhong at any time. Rows of sheds separated the streets, with people coming and going like the tide. Stalls were filled with things for sale, and there were also stalls like the Four Links Chamber of Commerce that had nothing on sale, waiting for the Divine Ruin Realm to come out. It was a little like waiting for the rice to be cooked, but wasn't the Four Links Chamber of Commerce just waiting for the rice to be cooked? On the large square, rows of sheds lined up. Yu Qianqiu roughly estimated that there were no less than 10,000 stalls. Immediately, he pulled Tao Zhong's sleeve, asking, "Does every stall here have to pay 50 million divine-grade spirit stones?" Tao Zhong reluctantly grunted in agreement, expressing his dissatisfaction. Yu Qianqiu looked at Tao Zhong with a strange expression, but immediately understood that he had troubled the other party too much, and the other party was clearly expressing his dissatisfaction. "This is easy, you'll be satisfied in no time." Yu Qianqiu glanced left and right, then dragged Tao Zhong to a shop diagonally opposite. Pointing at a storage bracelet wrapped around an iron rod, he asked the shopkeeper, "How much is this?" Tao Zhong replied coldly, "This thing is not cheap." The shopkeeper sized up the two people's attire. They didn't look like rich people, but he still smiled. 10 rooms, 1 divine-grade spirit stone for 1, no bargaining. Without a word, Yu Qianqiu took out a divine-grade spirit stone from his storage pouch, throwing it to the shopkeeper. "Take 1. The shopkeeper caught the divine-grade spirit stone and was dazed for a moment, realizing that he had made a mistake. He immediately took out a storage bracelet, respectfully offering it with both hands. "Please check." Yu Qianqiu received it and sent in his divine sense to inspect it. There was nothing wrong with it, so he turned around and stuffed it into Tao Zhong's hand. He smiled and said, "I have been troubling Brother Tao for a long time. I have no way to repay you." Tao Zhong was already shocked by Huang's action of casually taking out a divine-grade spirit stone, Tao Zhong Yang, and said, seeing as he was, "This, I don't know how. With Tao, I can't accept." You're using a storage pouch. Tao Zhong was about to return the bracelet to Huang Xiaolong. In the immortal world, those below the immortal realm would rarely wear a storage bracelet, except for those big family's disciples. Itinerant cultivators like them from the immortal world would find it hard to earn 1,000 top-grade spirit stones in a year. However, Yu Qianqiu had given him a storage bracelet worth 10,000 top-grade spirit stones. How could he not be shocked? To him, this was indeed a heavy gift. It's just a bracelet, it's not as serious as you say. I'm just not used to wearing a lump of iron on my wrist. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand to reject Tao Zhong's gift. Although Huang Xiaolong said it casually, Tao Zhong still felt that the gift was too heavy, trying to reject it again. In the end, the shopkeeper chimed in, since it's someone's kind intention, just accept it. This person doesn't look like someone who lacks money. Tao Zhong looked at the two people, a wry smile on his face, then, I'm sorry. After admiring the storage bracelet for a while, Tao Zhong wore it on his wrist, then cupped his fists at Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, come, let's go, we'll continue our stroll. The shopkeeper quickly interjected, honored guest, I still have a lot of good things here, why don't you take a look? Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, declining the shopkeeper's offer. When the two of them reached the street again, Tao Zhong no longer tried to hide from Yu Qianqiu. Instead, he blindly followed behind Yu Qianqiu, ready to act as a guide at any time. This was called a method to take advantage of others, and it was a very realistic situation. Yu Qianqiu once again asked, every shop here has to pay 50 million divine grade spirit stones. Tao Zhong immediately answered, that's right, only those who pay the immortal palace are qualified to set up stalls and open shops here. As he spoke, he kept touching the storage bracelet on his wrist, afraid that he might accidentally drop it. Yu Qianqiu sucked in a breath of cold air. There were at least 10,000 shops here, and each shop had to pay 50 million divine grade spirit stones. Just from this alone, the immortal palace would earn at least a few 100 billion divine grade spirit stones. That old immortal emperor had struck it rich, this was the benefit of being a big boss. I heard that the sects and trading houses that enter the Divine Ruin Realm can earn a lot of money. Since the Divine Ruin Realm is controlled by the immortal palace, why don't they go treasure hunting themselves instead of letting others participate? Yu Qianqiu asked. Who says the immortal palace doesn't participate? Tao Zhong laughed, the Divine Ruin Realm only opens once every 100 years, the immortal palace naturally wouldn't give up such an opportunity. One must know that the deeper one goes into the Divine Ruin Realm, the more valuable treasures there will be. Although all the big sects and trading houses have spent money to participate, the cultivation of the people they send in is restricted, not allowing people above immortal realm to enter. Think about it, in the past countless years, every time the Divine Ruin Realm opened, the outer perimeter has been swept clean countless times, where would there be anything valuable left? However, it's too dangerous to go deeper, and it's hard for people below immortal realm to enter. But the immortal palace itself is different. The people they send in won't be restricted by their cultivation. They can go deeper and find more precious and valuable things. Yu Qianqiu blanked for a moment, then words came out of his mouth after a long while. Black? Really black? Too black? What's the difference between this and daylight robbery? Then he carefully looked around, there's no danger in talking about this topic, right? Tao Zhong shook his head, this topic has been discussed too many times, the immortal palace dares to do this, they aren't afraid of others talking behind their backs. They didn't force anyone, they just set a standard. Who told everyone to rush in, those who didn't get the qualifications to enter would be unhappy instead. It's all because of the monopoly. Yu Qianqiu shook his head speechlessly. When he passed by a shop called Skyward Palace, he paused. The shop's signboard read, buying in large quantities. Dragon scale grass, 1,000 divine grade spirit stones per stalk, 100 head vine, 800 divine grade spirit stones per stock, heavenly violet star, 400 divine grade spirit stones per stock. In short, there were a lot of things listed on the signboard, and none of them were sold for less than 1 divine grade spirit stone. Seeing the confusion on Huang Xiaolong's face, Tao Zhong immediately explained, Skyward Palace is the largest alchemy sect in the immortal world. The prices listed here are the prices of items that are not lacking in the market. Some genuine top-grade immortal herbs are not listed here, and are traded in private. Truly good things can go as high as hundreds of millions, billions, or even tens of billions of divine-grade spirit stones. For people like us at the bottom of society, we might not even be able to buy a stalk of dragon-scale grass even after working hard for a lifetime. Poor. The corner of Yu Qincho's mouth twitched. Only now did he realize that he had really overestimated himself. He thought he was very rich, but it turned out that his net worth couldn't even compare to a stalk of grass here. What the hell? This was really intolerable. This time, he was really provoked. Secretly gritting his teeth, he turned around and asked with a smile, "These valuable things are in the Divine Ruin Realm?" Tao Zhong nodded, "Of course, otherwise the Skyward Palace wouldn't have hung a buying signboard here. It all depends on whether everyone has the ability to find them or not. For a small trading house like the Four Links, the reason why they did not hesitate to borrow money to enter the Divine Ruin Realm is because as long as they can find a stock of high-grade immortal herb, they will be able to recoup all the money they spent." Yu Qincho's heart skipped a beat, suddenly feeling that his chance to make a fortune had come. He couldn't help looking at the signboard a few more times, wanting to memorize all the valuable things listed on it. But with just one look, he saw the problem. He suddenly realized that he didn't seem to recognize any of the grass listed on the signboard. Even if he entered the Divine Ruin Realm, he would most likely think that it was just a weed. Yu Qincho immediately coughed, turned around and asked, "Is there a shop here that sells all kinds of precious items?" "Of course there is. It's rare to see a day like this where all the sects and trading houses in the immortal world gather. It's a good time to do business." Tao Zhong waved his hand and pointed around. "There are only things you can't think of here, and there's nothing you can't buy, as long as you have the money. The various precious items you mentioned should be sold in the Wangutong shop." Yu Qiancho immediately waved his hand, indicating for him to lead the way. As they walked, he asked, "What does Wangutong do?" Although Tao Zhong was surprised that he didn't even know about Wangutong, he was already used to his ignorance. He casually explained, "It's the largest auction and appraisal shop in the immortal world, and it's very rich." The two of them strolled along a few streets, asking many people before they finally found Wangutong's shop. As soon as the two of them walked in, a well-dressed, beautiful, and graceful woman walked out from the side of several old men. She walked over with a smile and asked, "Do you want to buy, see, appraise, or entrust something to be auctioned?" The dazzling array of items in the shop dazzled Yu Qiancho, but he didn't recognize many of them. He paused for a moment and asked, "Are there any precious items?" "Yes." The beautiful woman took a few steps back, pointing at the piles of jade archives on the shelves at the side as she introduced, "Antiques, immortal records, medicinal pills, immortal herbs, immortal artifacts, beasts, and all kinds of rare ores and metals. What kind and grade do you need?" Yu Qiancho was taken aback. "What do you mean by grade?" The beautiful woman was stunned by his question. Tao Zhong hurriedly raised his hand at the woman, gesturing for her to wait for a moment. He whispered into Yu Qiancho's ear, "Items like these are usually protected with restrictions, and can't be duplicated. Once duplicated, the information recorded inside will be destroyed. Usually, the price is set according to the rarity of the item. The rarer the item, the higher the price." Chapter 807. Yu Qiancho made an "oh" sound to indicate that he understood. Looking at the items on the shelf, he probed, how much would it cost if I buy all the items on the shelf? Tao Zhong turned his head and rolled his eyes. The beautiful and capable woman was taken aback, her gaze sweeping over Yu Qianqiu once more. Although she guessed that this person wouldn't be able to afford it, she still maintained a warm attitude and calculated the price of the whole set of items. She replied with a smile, if you want to buy all the items of different grades, it would cost a total of 274 pieces of divine grade spirit stones. If you are sincere, we can waive the small change, just 270,000 divine grade spirit stones. Do you need it? So expensive. Yu Qianqiu exclaimed, walking up to the shelf and casually picking up a piece. Imbuing it with his divine sense, he placed it back down with a frown on his face. Isn't it just some drawings and some words? How can it be so expensive? The beautiful woman felt awkward for a moment, but maintained her smile as she explained, the quality of this account's items is guaranteed. These illustrations are the work of this account's expert appraiser, the authenticity of the illustrations and the real thing are almost perfect. Just based on the variety of items, I dare say that there is no other account that can surpass this account. Furthermore, the description of each item is very detailed, so it's definitely worth it. Yu Qianqiu turned to look at Tao Zhong, asking, is what she said true? Tao Zhong coughed lightly, awkwardly saying, Wang Gutong's reputation is unquestionable in the immortal world, since she said so, it shouldn't be wrong. 270,000 divine grade spirit stones. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his chin, muttering under his breath as if he was thinking of something. A moment later, he turned to the smiling woman waiting for his reply, how many sets do you have here? The woman smiled politely and said, you can have as many as you want. Yu Qianqiu's eyebrows rose, asking again, you really can't copy them? The woman's expression stiffened, and she didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she said, of course it can be copied, but this account has a special restriction on it. Only this account can copy it, outsiders can't copy it. To tell you the truth, this is also why I said that you can have as many as you want. Yu Qianqiu sighed with a little regret. It seemed that he would have to spend a lot this time. He waved his hand and said, forget it, just give me 100 sets. Ah! The woman was stunned. Her alluring red lips moved slightly as she awkwardly smiled and said, did you just say you want 100 sets? At this moment, the few old men who had not turned around all turned around and looked at Yu Qianqiu. Tao Zhong opened his mouth wide in disbelief. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, no more, no less. I want 100 sets. Oh right, is there a discount for buying a lot? The woman calmed down after confirming Huang Xiaolong's words. One look was enough to tell that she was someone who had seen the world. She smiled, one set will be 270,000 divine grade spirit stones, so 100 sets will be 27 million divine grade spirit stones. I'll take 25 million divine grade spirit stones from you, what do you think? Yu Qianqiu looked at the woman suspiciously. Even if Wang Gutong was filthy rich, this decision wasn't something an ordinary disciple could make, right? This woman wasn't simple, all right. Yu Qianqiu nodded his head, carefully observing the woman. Please wait a moment, I'll sort them out for you. The woman nodded and left, tidying up the jade archives on the shelf. The several old men also came over to help, and very soon, 100 sets of jade archives were sorted out. The woman even used a storage bag to store the jade archives, handing them over to Yu Qianqiu for inspection. Yu Qianqiu was merely checking if the number of jade archives was correct, he had no way of verifying it. However, he believed that since Wang Gutong was able to become the industry leader in the immortal world, she wouldn't resort to such underhanded means. Putting away the storage bag, Huang Xiaolong also took out a storage bag for himself, passing it to the woman, count it. The woman quickly checked the number of divine grade spirit stones inside the storage bag, smiling, 25 million divine grade spirit stones is correct. She turned around and passed the storage bag to one of the old men behind her. When she turned around again, she saw Yu Qianqiu walking out of the room. She immediately called out, "Wait a moment." Yu Qianqiu turned around with a frown on his face. "We've already cleared the transaction. Is there a problem?" The woman quickly walked over to him, introducing herself with a smile. "I'm Wan Ling. May I know how to address this honored guest? Did she take a liking to me because of my generosity?" Yu Qianqiu thought it was impossible. If it was before, he wouldn't have dared to take out so many divine-grade spirit stones to spend, afraid it would be too conspicuous. But after strolling around the streets, he realized that spending several tens of millions of divine-grade spirit stones wasn't even enough to buy a blade of grass for a wealthy family. It couldn't be considered ostentatious. "I'm just a customer who came and went in a hurry. There's no need to leave my name, right?" Yu Qianqiu's brows were slightly furrowed. Wan Ling smiled, taking out a purple gold medal token, handing it over. "My grandfather is the Wangu Tong sect's chief. This token is convenient for honored guests to have dealings with me. Within this Wangu Tong sect's business scope, if there's anything you need my help with, you can use this token to receive preferential treatment and the best service. Please accept this token." She really isn't an ordinary person. Yu Qianqiu was dazed for a moment. Seriously, this thing should be similar to the VIP card in his previous life. Perhaps he could use it in the future. Reaching out to receive the token, Huang Xiaolong studied it over and over again. There were only 3 simple words Wangu Tong engraved on it. Other than the special material used, there wasn't even a trace of extra pattern. But it was obvious that someone had spent a lot of effort on those 3 words, as they were carved with vivid and lifelike vines. Yu Qianqiu put away the token, cupping his fists in greeting. "This one is Yu Qianqiu. I have some matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave here." The smile on Wan Ling's face grew wider, reaching out a hand. "Take care, I won't send you off." Once the 2 of them left the shop, Tao Zhong didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Yu Qianqiu's wealth had truly shocked him. Only now did he realize that Yu Qianqiu was not on the same level as him. He was just a mere rogue cultivator, but Yu Qianqiu's background was unfathomable to him. But what he couldn't figure out was, since he was so rich, why would he participate in such a dangerous divine ruin stage general assembly? Tao Zhong rubbed the bracelet on his wrist, and connecting it to Yu Qianqiu's idiotic question, a guess immediately formed in his mind. He had a strong suspicion that this Yu Qianqiu must be some rich family's disciple, the kind that had just seen the world for the first time and went out to gain experience. Several old men from the Wangu Tong shop approached Wan Ling, one of them asking, "Just a mere 20 million divine-grade spirit stones, is it worth miss giving out a profound violet token?" Wan Ling smiled but did not reply. Another old man behind her chuckled, "Maybe it's not worth it, maybe it's very worth it. I've never seen anyone buy so many illustrations at once, hee. Illustrations of rare and precious items. Who would spend so much money to buy this kind of thing? Either he has the real thing to compare it to, or there's something wrong with his brain." But did you notice a very special situation? The old man who spoke first was frowning in thought when Wan Ling turned around with a smile, looking at his attire. It's obvious he's not up to standard, yet he could casually take out 20 million divine-grade spirit stones. Although 20 million divine-grade spirit stones is nothing to us, it's not something an ordinary person can take out. The contrast is too big. What puzzles me the most is that he doesn't seem to be familiar with our famous Wangu Tong shop. Also, I can't see through his cultivation. I wonder if the 3 elders can. The second old man nodded. "This is the special situation I was talking about. Even with my late-stage great immortal realm cultivation, I can't see through his cultivation. Could it be that he's an early immortal emperor? In the immortal world, which early immortal emperor isn't famous? But I've never seen him before. Isn't this strange?" The other 2 elders exchanged a glance. It was obvious from their expressions that they didn't pay much attention. The first old man spoke solemnly. Maybe he took some kind of immortal pill to conceal his cultivation. I hope so. Otherwise, it's too strange. Wan Ling pondered for a moment. Suddenly, the distant sound of a bugle horn came from outside, sharp enough to pierce one's eardrums. Wan Ling raised her head to look at the crowd flying away from the street, her expression solemn. The godly ruin realm is finally open, let's go take a look. It'll also boost the confidence of our Wangu Tong disciples. The three old men nodded, and as she walked out of the shop, the shopkeeper who had been hiding outside immediately came in. When the bugle horn sounded, Yu Qianqiu and Tao Zhong had just returned to see Tong's shop. Not long after, the other hired people also squeezed in one after another. It seemed like they had all been startled back by the sound of the bugle horn. Everyone excitedly and nervously talked about the opening of the godly ruin realm. Not long after, the crowd on the street outside completely disappeared. Mu Bing stood inside without any reaction. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, feeling that it was a little strange. Yu Qianqiu was in a hurry to go in. He couldn't help but ask, President Mu, are we not going into the godly ruin realm? Mu Tianjiao, who was beside Mu Bing, looked at the crowd and smiled. The godly ruin realm's spiritual energy is very abundant, and it only opens once every 100 years. Who knows what kind of heavenly treasures have grown? Right now is the time when everyone is fighting and robbing, and also when the casualties are the highest. Moreover, it's very crowded right now. It'll take at least half a day for hundreds of thousands of people to go in. We're not in a hurry, we'll go in half a day. Everyone suddenly understood. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, Thank you, miss, for understanding us. Mu Tianjiao smiled and shook her head. At this time, Mu Bing, who had his back facing the crowd, slowly turned around and bowed to the crowd with a solemn expression. This time, my daughter will also be entering the godly ruin realm with everyone. I hope everyone can help take care of her. Nan Tianlong, whose thick brows were knitted together, also bowed to the crowd. Everyone looked at each other speechlessly, wondering if this Mu Bing had gone crazy over money, to actually be willing to put his own daughter in danger. In truth, Yu Qianqiu quite admired Mu Tianjiao, and didn't want anything to happen to her. He couldn't help but frown and say, President Mu, why do you have to do this? Entering depends entirely on luck, and you don't expect your daughter to be able to pick up something good. You'd better reconsider. Some things can't be retrieved once they're lost. Chapter 808. A hint of bitterness appeared on Mu Bing's face, but he did not refute anything. Instead, it was Mu Tianjiao who stood up with her chest out and cupped her fists towards the crowd. She smiled sweetly and decisively, Everyone has misunderstood my father. My father has been trying to stop me from entering the divine ruin realm, but my 4-links chamber of commerce is already swaying in the wind and rain. As my father's only daughter, how can I sit back and do nothing? For me to wait outside the ruins of God for a month without doing anything, I really can't do it. I hope everyone will work together with me to save my 4-links chamber of commerce from this crisis. Mu Tianjiao thanks everyone in advance. As she spoke, she bowed deeply. Everyone looked at each other and sighed in their hearts. It was Mu Tianjiao's misfortune to be born in the 4-links chamber of commerce, but the 4-links chamber of commerce with Mu Tianjiao was a great blessing. Yu Qianqiu could not help but let out a sigh in his heart. A daughter should be like Mu Tianjiao. She was much better than her father. A few miles away from the square, under a huge stone mountain, was a dark cave with a diameter of dozens of meters. White mist was rising from it, lingering outside the cave. A thick and majestic ancient aura was pulsating in and out, shocking everyone outside the cave. Then, the white mist shrank and gathered inside the cave, blooming with a white stream of light and spinning. The hundreds of thousands of people outside stared intently at this scene until the white light in the cave stabilized. It's open, it's open. The crowd burst into excited cheers. The divine ruin realm had finally opened, and everyone's eyes were burning with excitement. Outside the cave were thousands of golden-robed men, each of them looking around vigilantly, keeping the hundreds of thousands of people away from the cave entrance. The stone mountain was also filled with thousands of golden-robed men, watching below. The external affairs commander of the immortal palace, Wu Xiong, stood behind the thousands of golden-robed men, quietly standing beside the cave entrance with his hands behind his back. His cold gaze swept over the hundreds of thousands of people from the various sects and chambers of commerce. He was the commander who had helped Mu Tianjiao out of trouble before. At this moment, the hundreds of thousands of people all stared at the side of the mountain. They saw a team of 100 golden-robed men walking neatly from the side. They lined up in front of Wu Xiong and knelt on one knee, saying, "Greetings, Commander." Wu Xiong nodded slightly and said indifferently, "Let's begin." The 100 people all stood up. The leader waved his hand at them and signaled for them to set off. He took the lead and flew into the swirling white light in the cave. The others also followed him without hesitation. Then, a person walked out from behind Wu Xiong and waved his arm forward. The thousands of golden-robed men immediately changed their formation, forming of one group of 100, of each group of 100, and immediately separated dozens of paths. The hundreds of thousands of people gathered outside immediately surged and slowly moved forward. The immortal of the hundreds of thousands of people had. Of the rules, of. For a time, people from the various sects and merchant guilds could be seen passing through the golden-robed guards and rushing into the cave. As for the situation behind the cave, no one knew. However, everyone could imagine how cruel the bloody competition was, because every time the divine ruin realm opened, out of the hundreds of thousands of people who entered, less than 100,000 would return. Some sects and chambers of commerce would send 30 disciples in, but only 1 or 2 would come back alive. Some unlucky ones might not even make it back alive. That would be a huge loss. But those disciples who could come back alive and make great contributions to the sect would not have to worry about living for the rest of their lives. Then again, if there was a heavy reward, there would definitely be brave men. If there was no heavy reward, who would risk their lives? After more than half a day, the hundreds of thousands of people had finally entered. Instead, tens of thousands of elders from various sects had gathered in the sky. They were all nervously staring at the scene below. They would be waiting here for a month, and their respective stalls would be their lodgings. 1 month later, whether the sect would be happy or sad would depend on whether their disciples lived up to expectations. Those who lived up to expectations would be able to display many rare items in their own stalls to sell, while the unlucky ones would either have to spend money to buy things or pack up and leave. The Four Links Chamber of Commerce was the last to arrive. When the people from the various sects and chambers of commerce had all left, they walked up to the golden-robed guards for inspection. Many people in the sky felt strange looking at this group of people. There were only 31 people in total, and 2 of them clearly had cultivation that exceeded the limit, while the last one's cultivation couldn't be seen through. Excluding these 3 people, there were only 28 people participating. For this kind of thing, everyone hoped that the more people that went in, the better it would be. Perhaps the extra person that came out would be able to collect precious items worth hundreds of millions or even hundreds of billions of divine-grade spirit stones. At the very least, the more people that went in, the more likely there would be one more person that would come back alive, and at least bring something out. No one had ever seen such a situation before, and they couldn't figure out what the Four Links Chamber of Commerce was up to. Some people who had dealings with the Four Links Chamber of Commerce knew the predicament they were in, shaking their heads and sighing. As for Qi Fengxing, who had a deep understanding of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce, he was sneering at the side. Wan Ling and the 3 elders exchanged a glance, noticing that Yu Qianqiu was standing at the end of the group, walking at the back of the group in a well-behaved manner. However, his head kept darting left and right, as if he was curious about everything. It was not easy for someone like him to be able to stand at the end of a group of several 100,000 people. Being the only one among several 100,000 people was quite eye-catching. However, the most eye-catching thing was yet to come. Two golden-robed guards suddenly raised their hands and shouted, "Stop right there. You're not allowed to go in," cutting off Yuchincho's little tail from the outside. Everyone's gazes were fixed on him. Yuchincho was isolated outside, dumbfounded as he looked around. Facing the group of golden-robed guards that were glaring at him like tigers watching their prey, he swallowed hard and said, "Why, if they can go in, why can't I go in?" One of the golden-robed guards snorted coldly, "There's no why. Leave now." Mu Bing hurried over with Nan Tianlong, bowing and explaining, "You may have misunderstood. His cultivation is only at the soul formation stage. He's only like this because he took an immortal pill that conceals his cultivation. That's your business. There's no need to explain it to me." The golden-robed guard shouted, "Leave now, or you'll be killed." Mu Bing couldn't hold back after hearing such harsh words. Mu Tianzhao, who had already passed the inspection, quickly ran back. She bowed to the golden-robed guard and begged, "Big brother, please do me a favor. He really is only at the soul formation stage. You can check him." Commander Wu Xiong, who was standing at the entrance of the cave, had no interest in this kind of thing. His subordinates naturally had their reasons for doing this, but when his gaze landed on Mu Tianzhao, he paused slightly. In a flash, he teleported to their side and asked indifferently, "What's going on?" After the group of people bowed, both sides explained the reason. Wu Xiong glanced at the small group of people and was somewhat curious. He stared at Mu Tianzhao and asked, "Why are there fewer people?" Mu Tianzhao immediately bowed and said, "Reporting to Commander, our Chamber of Commerce is in a difficult time. We really can't gather enough people. Other than my daughter, they were all recruited by our Chamber of Commerce. We're already very lucky to be able to recruit so many people." Wu Xiong had been in the celestial world for so many years, so of course he knew about ups and downs. He could roughly guess what was going on. He asked indifferently, "You want to enter the Divine Ruin Realm yourself?" "Yes." Mu Tianzhao replied respectfully. "We really don't have enough people." Wu Xiong didn't ask any more questions. He made an exception and put his hand on Yuchincho's shoulder. He discovered that Yuchincho's body was indeed filled with white true essence, not golden celestial essence. He didn't say the result himself. He said indifferently to the two guards, "Check his cultivation." "Yes." The two guards responded and immediately put a hand on Yuchincho's shoulder. Then they withdrew their hands and replied, "Late-stage soul formation cultivation." Wu Xiong nodded and said, "Late-stage soul formation cultivation entering the Divine Ruin Realm isn't against the rules, right?" One of them immediately reported, "Since it's been confirmed, it's not against the rules." Without another word, Wu Xiong waved his hand and said, "Let them pass." At the same time, he disappeared in a flash, not even giving Mu Tianzhao and the others a chance to thank him. After some twists and turns, under Mu Tianzhao's lead, the group of 28 people finally entered the Divine Ruin Realm. Wan Ling and the three elders looked at each other speechlessly after witnessing this scene. They didn't expect that Yuchincho had really taken an immortal pill to conceal his cultivation. What they didn't expect even more was that Yuchincho would actually enter such a dangerous place like the Divine Ruin Realm. The mystery of buying 100 sets of illustrations made them even more confused. Could it be to bring them into the Divine Ruin Realm for comparison? But they didn't even have 30 people, so what did they need 100 sets for? As soon as Yuchincho and the others entered the circling white light, they immediately felt as if they were in a starry sky. There were colorful streams of light flying around them, and there was a huge suction force in front of them that made them involuntarily pass through. In just a few moments, everyone felt their eyes light up. A huge force spat them out from the darkness of the flowing light. As soon as they stood firm, they immediately found that the exit was also a cave, and there was also a rotating white light behind them. This was also the entrance to go back. After a month, it would automatically disappear, and they could go back at any time within a month. However, once they went out, they would lose the chance to come back. The people of the Immortal Palace would not let them in again. However, no one would go back before the time limit was up. The consequences of going out midway were very serious. The sects would never be lenient to people who were afraid of death and brought shame to their sections. Of course, if they brought back a great treasure, that was another matter. Because that was called protecting a treasure meritorious. Everyone had already taken out their own treasures and walked out vigilantly. Yu Qianqiu walked out empty-handed. His treasures could appear at any time, so it was easier to use them empty-handed. As soon as everyone walked out of the cave, they were immediately shocked. What they saw was a bloody scene of corpses strewn all over the ground. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.